Live on the video stream.
And we're also live on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff. Looking forward to a fun afternoon with my guys, Sam Webb and Steve Clarke, and all of you listening on Sports Talk 1050, WTKA The Ticket, or watching on Ticket TV, which is Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and WTKA.com/countdown. Good afternoon here on the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor. My guys, Sam Webb and Steve Clarke. And I was thinking about this, guys, as last night as I was getting ready for the broadcast today. I should have been going to bed last night, getting ready for for senior day today at the Big House. A non-pandemic year, the way the schedule would have been set up, today would have been senior day. And here we are, instead of going to the Big House and broadcasting on it, was a pretty sunny day. Could have been there at the corner stadium in Maine. It's the start of the second half of the season as they get underway in Piscataway, New Jersey. It is quite the year here in 2020. So here we are, another night game. Would not have been a night game if that was the case. But here we are. Hello, good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Hey, didn't expect to be here looking eye to eye with Rutgers in the standings. You know, we talk about how bad a football team Rutgers is, how bad the football in North Jersey is. North Jersey and the state of Michigan have a lot in common when it comes to the state of football right now, guys. When you look at college football and pro football, these two are going head up, unfortunately. Did not expect to be here if you're Michigan. But, you know, first thing is, admission of where you are, where you stand. This is an opportunity for them to try to get some things right against a team that is equal to them in the standings. Now, if you look man for man, talent, Michigan does have more talent, but we know that hasn't translated to victory. So, you look back over the last couple of weeks, you try to find something that they can hang their hats on. And unfortunately, Steve Clarke, that hasn't been established yet. That, in addition to, finding the guys that will play from start to finish, full go with intensity and passion. Those are the two, I think, primary objectives as far as I'm concerned. Finding what you can hang your hat on. And before that, finding the guys, identifying the guys that can give you the fight from start to finish in a game.
Good to see you both, guys. We'll be here for the next 3 hours here on the Countdown to Kickoff on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA. This is a program. We have two programs going in opposite directions. We have a Rutgers team with a new head coach. Their favorite son has come back, and Greg Schiano, and they are on a rise. You see a team, when you look at them, and I've seen 3 of their games already, they play inspired football. And although, their record is 1-3, they play better than a 1-3 team. And Michigan right now is in free fall since the great opening win at Minnesota. So 2 different programs with 2 different histories, with 2 different trajectories, now colliding in a game that's kind of hard to figure what the final outcome may be.
Third straight terrible performance by the Michigan Wolverines last weekend in another loss. And we ask again, what the heck happened last weekend, Steve Clarke?
Well, first of all, and it's kind of ironic, Michigan looked like Rutgers, a traditional Rutgers team out playing against Wisconsin. I mean, it didn't start out well when your first offensive possession and your first play is an interception from yet another drop. Michigan has been played by drops by the last couple of years. You can no longer say that it's based on one quarterback. It's based on multiple quarterbacks. They have an inability to catch the ball in a crowd or even wide open at times. And this one cost you right away. Is Scott Nelson, a Detroiter, by the way, for the Wisconsin team, gets his first interception, I think, of his career, I believe, maybe not even the season, and sets Wisconsin up. They get a touchdown. Michigan in the second possession, they at least get a few plays off before another interception is thrown. So that, by now, it's just not a good start. Wisconsin is too powerfully, both offensively and defensively, to put yourself behind the 8 ball just a few minutes into the game. And then Michigan reacted like, unfortunately, they have in many circumstances. When they get in a hole or get in a rut, they cannot get themselves out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I think, absolutely nailed it when he talked about how they started this game. You could not afford, even against an opponent like Wisconsin, who have been on the shelf for the past couple of weeks, you couldn't afford to get off to a rough start. And you guys know I go back over the game painstakingly. It's painstakingly in a game like that with Al Borges. And so I went back and wrote down just the first 6 plays. So you had the drop pick with Eubanks. The second play was a false start. The third play was a tackle for loss. The fourth play was the running back missed an assignment. The fifth play was the interception by Joe Milton, his worst throw of the year. The sixth play was missing an easy pass. I mean, it's everywhere. And that's the problem offensively right now. If you could focus on one thing and say it's just that, then maybe you could feel a little more confident about the trajectory. But the problem on both sides of the ball is there's so many things. So a lot of focus on Joe Milton. Of course, it was his worst game by far, in my opinion. I think if you look back over the prior 3 games, like we have every single snap, charting them and who's at fault, what happened. He was really good in game 1. He was okay in games 2 and game 3. Like I've said plenty of times before, he did more good things than bad things, but enough bad for you to say, hey, missed some open guys, had some errant throws, was a little slow on some reads, but you could still feel like, okay, these are things that you can work with, things that you can clean up. The fourth game, he was completely out of his game. You could tell they didn't trust his eyes, Steve, when in the second quarter of that sequence where he throws a pass to the flat and it's an errant throw, then he pulls it on his own read and probably shouldn't have pulled it on that zone read, and then they ran it on third down. That told me everything I needed to know about the confidence that they had in Joe Milton at that moment. They stuck with him as well. You should see if he could come out of it. But then you get into the second half and his eyes are still failing you. But the problem, and because you look at the comparisons between him and Graham Mertz didn't have a great game. Graham Mertz was 12 for 22 from 12 for 22 throwing. He completed some wide open passes, but he missed some wide open passes. But you know what the biggest difference was? 340 yards rushing on the ground, Steve. An offensive line that block perimeter blocking. That was real good. If you don't have perimeter blocking, you don't get 100 yards receiving or 100 yards rushing for your receivers. The perimeter blocking since game 1 has been as bad as the interior blocking, Steve. And so again, I come back to what I've been saying before. They have got to find something, even if it means doing fewer things. They have got to find something that they can do well. And if they got to do that over and over again, they got to do that multiple times in the game, so be it. But be predictable, but at least be predictable with your execution too.
We've been around doing football games for a long time, guys. And, a head coach will tell you one of the keys to any football performance in any football game is winning the line of scrimmage. Michigan did not win the line of scrimmage again for the 3rd consecutive week. And you could just see it in the opening plays. Wisconsin's first play from scrimmage. Immediately, the Wisconsin Badgers had Michigan's defensive line 3 yards behind the ball before the tailback even got it. 3 yards, okay? And that was a trend that continued throughout the game. If you could get that much push on your offense, you're going to have a successful running game. Sam, you said it, 340 yards. Yeah, that's absolutely huge and indicative where Michigan is heading in terms of defensive line that was supposed to be the strength of that defense. Now that you have Aiden Hutchinson gone and you have Kwity Paye not playing in that game either, and the soft spots of that defensive line are now the guys who you expect the most from, that's disturbing, just to say the least. And that's something that is going to continue to be that way throughout the second half of the season. Michigan's going to have to find a way to overcome it.
And now that gets us to this game tonight, the 7th meeting between Michigan and Rutgers. The Wolverines 5-1 in the series last year. A 52-0 Michigan win in Ann Arbor back in September 2019. Michigan's 5th straight win in the series. The last time they were in Jersey, it was a 42-7 win by the 4th-ranked Wolverines in 2018. But the one that I've been thinking about a lot in the last really probably weeks, because I've been talking a lot about 2014 during recent post-game shows. And now here on the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff, it was the first ever meeting between the two schools. October 4th, 2014. It was a 26-24 Michigan loss at Rutgers in Brady Hoke's last season. Oh, the memories, Steve Clarke.
400 passing yards by a guy named Gary Nova. I mean, the family's named after a car. Okay. It's just, you didn't expect anything from Rutgers, but Michigan was just such in dire straits at that point. Rutgers had a great game. I think one of the things that stands out for me in that one was like a 3rd and 20 that was converted. I mean,
it's a Rutgers classic now on Big Ten Network.
Well, what else is there to show?
The Pinstripe Bowl, I think, from 1 year too.
Hey, the Big Ten Network is absolutely thrilled that Rutgers played basketball last season, because half their inventory just got stocked up from the basketball games of 2019/2020. But other than that, it was basically Rutgers versus Michigan in 2014. Then you have to find some old Big East games and get permission to show them on the Big Ten Network. But this is just one of those situations right now, again, where we'll be talking about, and something I think we're also going to be talking about a lot. Sam used the word trust. And I think that word is going to become a drinking game in this conversation for the next 3 hours, because I think there are trust issues throughout many teams in the Big Ten, not just at Michigan, but trust issues for the teams that are having a tough time, and trust issues in a good way for the teams that are surprisingly performing well.
Let me tell you something. If we see the kind of showing, the kind of presence on the football field against Rutgers that we saw against Wisconsin, they'll lose this game. And I feel like it's the easiest thing to correct. That I said last week, and I said during the game, if you have questions about pride and culture at the end of the game, that means you don't have leadership setting the right tone, and you don't have the right guys sort of leading the way for you on the football field that can give some of that to their teammates. That's a leadership-based thing, and that's a coaching thing. That's a coaching thing, identifying the guys who can give you that. And they might not be your captains. Maybe your captains, you get in the mix and you figure out your captains can't give the team what you need them to give. So elevate some other guys. There's some of that quality on this roster. We've seen it. We've seen it from a guy like Ronnie Bell. We saw it last year from a guy like Hassan Haskins. He may not be the fastest, the quickest, the most explosive of the backs, but I know he was a guy that we watched on the football field last year against Ohio State when the game seemed like it was over. He was one of the only guys playing like there was still some game to play. So give him the ball. Put him out front. Put the guys out front that are going to fight from start to finish. That's easy to correct. It might be a walk-on. Put them out there. If you got a question whether a guy is going to try, then you can't put him on the football field. You can't get to X's and O's if you can't get that piece. So get that piece first, and then figure out the X's and O's. I assume that that's what they did all week in practice. So if they did that all week in practice, now when you get on the football field, figure out what can you do consistently. And it might be one of those game plans, Steve Clarke, that gets criticized, gets knocked. People say, oh, you don't know what you're doing. You lack imagination. You might have to run 5-6 plays or 5-6 defenses until you find something they can do consistently, until you can predict execution. Because, I mean, a case in point, think about the one drive that Joe Milton sent them on there. It's a 4th and goal. You got a G lead play that you should be able to get 2 yards in your sleep. And then your perimeter blocking again blows up because they stepped the wrong way. You got to find the things that they can do consistently. That might mean doing fewer things, but only after you find the guys that are going to fight from start to finish. That's where you start. You don't find that in this game, you lose this game. And then when they come back, all of the questions about whether you got guys that quit, whether you have guys that don't trust, all those questions are going to prove to be true and warranted.
Coming up next, we're talking Big Ten football. An interesting day of Big Ten football is underway. I'm sure a lot of you are watching that while you're watching us as well. So stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Thank you, sir.
Can Indiana do it?
It's not looking like it.
Not looking like it, man. Michael Penix is a ball player.
Yeah, but if not for pick six, not for his pick six, he'd be. You guys are a little ahead of me on the. I'm watching on a video on this internet stream in this room.
Yeah, 9 seconds left. They're on their own 38.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm 10 seconds ahead, but they have not gained any yardage. Or 10 seconds behind, I should say. Yeah. Yeah, he's close. Was it 500 yards passing, give or take?
495. Yep.
That's the give or take part.
Yep. And if you want to be funny about it, he has 6 touchdown passes.
Mm-mm. Damn, man. I tell you what, Tom Allen might be gone. He might leave even with this, man. How did Gordon Hayward get a 4-year deal for $120 million? How?
Michael Jordan called him.
Yeah.
They had a conversation. He and MJ had a conversation. Indiana, apparently he wanted to go to the Pacers, or the Pacers wanted him, and Jordan said, no, we wanted you in 14, and we still want you.
I don't know how he got some team to pay him that much money. I'm sorry.
He opted out of a $34 million a year contract. You knew he was.
He must have known.
He really wanted to be somewhere, or he knew something was coming because somebody said there's an NFL agent that tweeted NBA free agency season is starting. NFL players, turn your heads.
That's a lot. You're right, Ira. That's a lot to risk for a guy with his injury history.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't guarantee at least the 1 year at 34, but obviously he got what he's looking for, and it might be his last contract.
And now Indiana's down to a 4th down with 5 seconds to go. So
you're down ahead of me.
I don't think it matters what down it is at that point.
that's really about it.
Yeah, it's the last play.
That's
It's essentially going to turn into, can you throw 62 yards?
Yeah. Hell of an effort.
Time for some hook and ladders apparently now.
That defense was all over Justin Fields. He made some plays with his legs to shake free a lot of would-be sacks.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So did Wisconsin score during a break?
Northwestern is 7-0 over Wisconsin, and I'm waiting for my computer to refresh.
That surprises me.
Yeah, I'm trying to get.
What channel is Wisconsin on?
ABC.
7 or 231 or
Your ABC local affiliate. We're back in less than a minute, by the way.
All right.
Thank you, Ms.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, Steve. Nebraska looked like trash.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Just have patience. We have conversations coming. Relax.
But also Brandon Peters probably good as well too.
BPD looked pretty good.
I'm happy for BP. No, but I'm checking on Hayes to see if he made the trip, but no Nova Stardust, no Jalen Mayfield, no Quiddy.
no Quiddy, no Jalen. Who else?
Nova Stardust.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, at this point, he was struggling, man. Let's see what Zach Carpenter can do.
Oh.
All right,
There's the bottle. There's the bottle. Not a sip, not a swallow. Steve needs the whole bottle.
All right. All right, guys, we're coming back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to the Key Bank Countdown and Kickoff, brought to you by Key Bank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. And guys, we're going to have a little bit of a Big Ten conversation before we get into the full conversation. A scoreboard update game just went final in Columbus. Ohio State holds on to beat Indiana 42-35. Earlier, another final, 41-23, Illinois over Nebraska, just underway. So 3-4 minutes into the first quarter, Iowa and Penn State are scoreless. and 10:50 to go in the first quarter. Northwestern is up 7-0 at Wisconsin. And the only other game tonight is the Michigan-Rutgers game. And so here we are. And wow, first let's talk about these games. That game was an exciting game. Ohio State, Indiana. If not for a pick six, Steve Clarke. Wow.
Oh yeah, no, it was in the second half. There was a pick six for Ohio State that gave them the lead, and then Indiana scored right back and got it within 7. If it wasn't for the pick six, this game would be tied. So I was really impressed, Sam, by the way IU came out in the first half. Justin Fields really struggled. That Indiana defense, I think, is for real.
I do.
They are active playmakers out on that field. They have now forced at least 2 turnovers on their opponents, I think, for the last 7 games in a row now. So this Indiana defense in the front, in the middle, and in the back making plays. And Justin Fields probably had one of his toughest games ever despite Ohio State's offensive explosion.
Yeah, man. I mean, how many interceptions did he have last year, Steve? 3 for the season? Something like that?
I'll look it up.
Couple in this game, they got in his face. They had him thinking. I mean, I guess the first interception was a bad throw. He underthrew, but the second interception he threw, that was pressure induced. I mean, they had him flailing. He was running to his right, threw it into traffic. They picked him off. It was an outstanding effort. And how can you say outstanding effort when they gave up 42 points? Ohio State is one of the most talented teams in the country, one of the 2 or 3 most talented teams in the country, and Indiana is not. They are not on the same level. From 1 to 85, hell, 1 to 22. But it's closer. It's closer than it ever has been. It's about the plan. And they talked about how their DC Womack saw how they got blown out last year. Was it 52-10 or something like that? He went back to the lab and said, we cannot play man-to-man against these guys. That is putting my guys in a bad position against talent that they're overmatched against. Zone them up, apply pressure, rally to the football, and we saw them come up and lay some big hits, make some plays that way. I think that you got to be able to mix it up effectively while getting some pressure up front with your front 4. Indiana was able to do that. And to your point, Steve, if Michael Penix doesn't throw that pick 6, what's the outcome of this game? And it's a shame that that's going to be what a lot of people point to, because he otherwise was brilliant. I said last year, I said earlier this year, I think Michael Penix is certainly their best quarterback since Antoine Randall, and he may go down when all is said and done as their best quarterback ever. He is a tremendous talent. He has skill talent around him. The question that you have about them, Steve, is will they get back to being able to complement him with a run game? They haven't run the football nearly as effectively as you thought they would. That might be the missing link for them.
How about this is taking a look at the numbers, Sam? Indiana with -1 yard rushing for the game against that Ohio State defense. I'm sure Penix, took it on the chin a little bit. But again, running game is an issue with Indiana. How about this, though, in the passing department? Maybe this is an Ohio State opponent record. 491 yards passing by Michael Penix against the Ohio State Buckeyes. They said that the secondary might be a bit of a weak link for Ohio State coming into the season. But wow, 490-some yards by Michael Penix. Meanwhile, Ohio State's total offense was over 600 yards and evenly distributed. Justin Fields, you're right, Sam, 3 interceptions in 2019, had 3 interceptions in this game today, had 2 touchdown passes, but threw for 300 yards. And the rushing game, sort of like Wisconsin against Michigan, had 307 rushing yards against the Indiana defense. So, yeah, it's kind of a scratch your head thing about Indiana, but when you watch the game, yeah, they gave up plays, but they made some plays as well.
Yeah, you're going to give up plays in today's college football against good teams.
Should also mention last night, Minnesota beats Purdue 35-31 in what's going to be a very remembered ending to the game. And also today, Michigan State, Maryland canceled because of a coronavirus outbreak within the Terps program, their second cancellation in the second straight week. So there's that as well. So guys, we're at the midway point of the season, right? And before we can get to a couple questions I have for you about the midway point of the season, Steve, let's preview these games. Wisconsin at Northwestern just underway, big game in the West.
Well, I mean, it means everything for Wisconsin, and it means everything for Northwestern at this point. The Northwestern-Purdue game that we talked about last week was going to decide who the challenger was for Wisconsin in the West. Wisconsin gets by Northwestern, it's game over. The only thing that can beat Wisconsin is COVID at that point, and whether they could actually be eligible. Because if Wisconsin, doesn't play one more game, then they won't actually be eligible to win the Big Ten title. So that's probably their biggest opponent after this game against the Wildcats. But the Wildcats up early, which is kind of surprising because I think the strength of this Wisconsin Badger team is not the offense. It's their defense under coordinator Jim Leonard, a rising star coming through the coaching ranks. And he is just absolutely outstanding. He's a Wisconsin native, he's a Wisconsin player, and has been basically underestimated everywhere he went. He was a non-scholarship player at Wisconsin. He became an All-American. He got undrafted in the NFL. He played there for 10 years. And then he became, I think, the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin within his second year of coaching. And then putting the numbers and the players, the unknown players, their scheme, making things happen. Showed it against Michigan this week. I'm surprised that they gave up 7 early on to the Wildcats.
Yeah, and we're on the verge of possibly getting scored on again. We'll have to see in the break whether or not there was a turnover. But look, unfortunately for Wisconsin, they didn't get a good look in preparation for this game with Northwestern. I mean, they didn't have very much of a test at all. It was more like a warm-up last week against Michigan. Unfortunately for Michigan, as far as they're concerned, unfortunately for them, they're going to face a team that's much stouter in the trenches, a team that has built up some confidence. We predicted the game last week. I felt like Northwestern, behind finally some competent quarterback play with Peyton Ramsey, was going to get back on track, and it really looks like they have. Wisconsin, if they can get consistent quarterback play when it comes to down the football field, because watching last week's game, again, it looked like Graham Mertz had a better game than he did because Michigan's quarterback play, Joe Milton, struggled so mightily. Joe had such a bad game that it made Graham Mertz look good, but he was 12 for 22 from 12 for 22 passing, like I said, and he missed some wide open guys. So can you hit guys consistently down the football field is going to be a major question for the Wisconsin Badgers, because I don't think they're going to be able to run the football against other teams like they ran it against Michigan. They're going to have to make some plays through the air. That's the key to their success today if they're going to have it.
The other game today at 3:30 that is now underway, Iowa at Penn State, Steve Clarke.
Well, I mean, the big thing here is the difference where you have Penn State, like Michigan, in free fall, and an Iowa team that looked like they had pretty much hung it up after 2 games, found the resolve to come back. If you have any optimism for Michigan, look at the Iowa Hawkeyes as an example of a team that can turn it around. Minnesota also turned it around against Purdue, but let's stick with Iowa for the moment because they have found their running game. Sam, they found, like you said, find what you do well and hang your hat on it. That's what Iowa was doing. Spencer Petras, the Iowa quarterback, is not a throwing machine. Well, he throws interceptions, but he's not, a completion machine to his own team. He is not the savior of the Iowa Hawkeyes right now. So you run the football, and you run it with Mekhi Sargent, and you run it with Tyler Goodson, and that is working for them. They've outscored their opponents 84-14 in the last 2 games and wins over Purdue and Minnesota. Now they're actually a favorite, something that hasn't happened very much to James Franklin in his tenure at Penn State, where he is a home underdog. Usually that would probably happen when the Buckeyes coming in, but not when anybody else comes in. And right now I think the Hawkeyes are a field goal favorite. I don't have a look at this game of how this going at the moment, Ira.
3-0 Iowa, 8:23 to go in the first quarter. Penn State has the ball. Will get the ball. I believe Iowa just put those points on the board.
Nobody expected to have Penn State to have the problems that they were having through 4 games this year. And I think it's a challenge for them to see if they can pick it up. They did pick it up with new quarterback Will Levis, who came in the middle of that Nebraska game and rallied them to a point where they almost tied the game But again, they're going back to work and trying to get a clue about what they can do to finally get a win.
So I think if you're Michigan, you're looking at a Michigan fan, you're looking at both of these teams. You're looking at last week as maybe an indicator of what could take place for Michigan. On the high end, on the positive note, to your point, Steve, I didn't think there's any way Iowa was going to get up off the mat. They looked inept the first couple of weeks, like they weren't going to be able to find an offense. You have the offseason turmoil that they were dealing with. You have players, several black players suing them. You have that affecting them on the recruiting trail, where recruits are saying they wouldn't want to go to Iowa. I mean, and you got the transfers. You got so many transfers. All of these external factors, things outside of what's going on as far as play on the football field is concerned, that make you think there's no way this team's going to get up. In the last couple of weeks, that's exactly what they've done, starting with a thrashing of a Michigan State team that's as bad as I said they were. Just so happens that they played a Michigan team that's not nearly as good as I thought they were going to be. So can this Michigan team look at Iowa getting up off the mat and see that as a model, as something to aspire to when it comes to recovery? You can also look at the quarterback situation at Penn State, because they started talking about, the week prior, Sean Clifford. I don't know. We're going to have to start looking at Will Levis too. And maybe we see both quarterbacks and Sean Clifford comes out, doesn't play well, and they go to Levis. And so I think that when you look at Joe Milton and you see him get an opportunity to bounce back from last week's game, which was, I mean, he wasn't the only issue with them offensively, but he definitely was one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue for them offensively last week. And you couldn't say that the weeks prior. So what I think that does for them as coaches is I don't think his leash is going to be as long as it was against Wisconsin. They went all the way into the second half. If he's looking in this game like he looked last week versus Wisconsin, Steve, I think the hook gets put on him a lot quicker than it was against Wisconsin last week.
The conversation continues in the start of the break. A lot more about the Big Ten and, of course, about Michigan versus Rutgers here on the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff. A reminder, listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show, brought to you by Retirement Income Solutions and presented by Alta Equipment Company. And you'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Stay with us. More of the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff on the other side of the break, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor, and here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Man, a lot of questions out here.
What's up, Ant? How you doing, buddy?
Illinois just may have committed a homicide on Twitter. Illinois athletics, good game, Nebraska. Thanks for bringing back B1G football. My soul has left my body, guys.
I like it.
I like it. Hey, we are now reduced to making fun of other teams. It's funny that Illinois has anywhere to talk about their football program.
That's true. You're right.
But how about this? I mean, I try to follow all the Big Ten teams, guys. And so for a week ago before the Penn State game, we thought that Illinois was probably the worst team in the Big Ten based on the way they played. They've won the last two games they played. Out in Nebraska, there was so much drama about whether Scott Frost would bench his third-year starting quarterback, Adrian Martinez, for Luke McCaffrey. I mean, tears were coming in Scott Frost's weekly press conference eyes saying, how much he loves Adrian Martinez because they came in together. They were like this with one another. So finally comes out. I mean, and this stuff could have played on a Spanish soap opera. Okay, about how emotional it was, and today McCaffrey fumbles on the first play, throws 2 picks in the first half, throws 3 picks in the game, and former Michigan quarterback Brandon Peters, who's been on COVID, he comes in despite Isaiah Williams with a 192 rushing yard performance as a quarterback against Rutgers, gets benched, and Peters has a heck of a day. And by the way. This week, Sam, Frost issues 12 black shirts to members on their defense. Haven't brought out the black shirts in a long time. The Nebraska fans, with their win over Penn State, feeling they are back to the Tom Osborne era once again because of one win. And what was the final score? 41-23 is the reaction.
Yeah. So to your first point, though, it's why you can't be hasty with a quarterback decision. And I there's so much invested in the preparation. I mean, people take the performance, especially the one last week, as a sign that what they were hearing out of practice was BS, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Joe definitely, by all accounts, players and coaches, was without question the best quarterback in camp. But what does that mean? What I've come to believe is you got to take a lot. you got to put a lot into who he was achieving that against. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks now have a lot of success against Michigan secondary, right? I mean, we've seen
context is important, Sam.
Yeah, context is very, very important. So, guys have really struggled with getting to the field and recalibrating and realizing, hey, you might be seeing a stiffer challenge on the game day field than you see on the practice field. As unfortunate as that is to say, that's the only thing you can draw, because they aren't making it up. They aren't making it up. Too many people are saying the same thing. It's not just coaches saying it. It's not just offensive players saying it or defensive players saying it. They were all saying the same thing. So they're all saying the same thing, and it's not on the record. It's not a press conference. Pretty well true. Now, will it translate today? His response in practice this week that remains to be seen. That's why you can't be hasty, Steve. Why you can't be hasty is this: why they're going to ride with Joe, albeit with a shorter leash. If he doesn't show that they can.
Back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Win the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgate at home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light. It's easy. Just go to WTKA.com/countdown and click for your chance to win. It's the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgate at home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light and Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Welcome back to the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff, brought to you by KeyBank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. And guys, I want to continue the conversation about the Big Ten, because I was kind of curious about your thoughts about things at the midway point of the Big Ten Conference. But before I can ask you even that, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska. Think about those three programs. Think about what we all grew up watching with those three programs. And Steve, where are we now?
Well, you brought an interesting point up before the program began. If you imagine in 1997 some visionary came from the future, talked to both fan bases in the past and says, by the way, in 23 years, your head coach is going to be Jim Harbaugh. And in Nebraska, you're going to say your future head coach is Scott Frost. I mean, I think people would be frothy on both sides of the equation, thinking all about that. Right now, it's amazing. In 1997, you just mentioned 3 of the top 5 teams in college football. That fateful weekend where everything changed hands. And those are 3 of your top 5 football teams. Let's add another one in that. And I know you just wanted to do it with the Big Ten, but a 4th member of that top 5 group was Florida State at the time. And I think the 5th one was North Carolina. So you take all 5 of those top 5 teams going into that one, and how the fortunes have changed for all 5 of them in that 23-year time period. But again, Penn State, Nebraska, Michigan, they are blue bloods. Pun intended, that they are supposed to be year in and year out towards the top of their game. And right now, again, we know the Michigan situation. The Penn State situation isn't getting talked about as much. And it's probably because James Franklin isn't in a contract year. That's probably the reason why they haven't been mentioned so often in the same light that they are with Michigan. I saw ESPN this morning trying to talk about James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh together, and there was about 10 seconds of Penn State conversation, and the rest was about the fortunes of the Wolverines. But your point is well taken, Ira. A lot has changed, and you have a lot of people at all of these fan bases yearning for yesterday.
I was curious for you guys. I'll start with you, Sam. What's your biggest surprise in the Big Ten at the midway point?
Biggest surprise is Indiana to me. Indiana is as good as they are. They came back from, what should have been a defeat were it not for that guy we just talked about, James Franklin. They've been stepping up their play in every game since, and that includes in the loss today. So this is a giant leap for Indiana this year. And frankly, I think we might be seeing the last few games of Tom Allen's Indiana coaching career with the job that he's done there, making them defensively viable, getting the offense back to the kind of explosiveness that we saw for the past 10 years. They've gotten back to that as well. I think he's going to command a lot of attention across the football landscape. And then, he gives you that passion and those sound bites, that charisma that I think a lot of fan bases like to see.
You're right on the latter part. I mean, he drives me crazy. He and PJ Fleck. I mean, to me, it just seems so artificial. Doesn't seem sincere. But the players have bought in.
Exactly.
The Leo, the love each other thing. That's why I don't think he's leaving at the end of this year. I think it's too soon. I think he needs to do it again for a second year before schools start taking this seriously, and that Indiana's not a flash in the pan. Indiana's definitely a surprise. They were everybody's trap game before the beginning of the season. Now they're Ohio State's challenger. Not anymore, but they were Ohio State's challenger into this. So to me, I think the biggest surprise is Penn State, that they have not yet won a game. And they'll continue to be the biggest surprise until they actually win one. And then I might have to shift my thinking once again. But, Michigan is not the only team that's disappointing. Mm-hmm. Minnesota was supposed to be Wisconsin's challenger, and they're not. They're not even close. Michigan, Penn State, all these teams that were supposed to be the ones challenging their division. And I think that's quite frankly why there is such a drop-off. You have these teams that were supposed to be the challengers in their respective divisions, only to find themselves completely out of it by the second or third weekend of the Big Ten schedule, and the players are acting like it, or the coaches are acting like it. And it's like, what are we playing for? And throughout this entire process, they're trying to be their best COVID-wise, socially distant-wise, making all the tough decisions. For a 19 or 20-year-old, it's easy for me as a 50-year-old guy to keep away from people. The older you are, I think the more you want to stay away from people. You're 19 or 20 years old. You want to meet people. You want to be people. You don't believe this is going to affect you because, look, COVID isn't going to bother me. I'm 19, 20 years old, 21, whatever. It's harder for them to be disciplined about this, and they're doing it for a reason. And then after the second week of Big Ten play, why did I turn this down in July? Why did I, not do something I really wanted to do in August? I think they're emotionally down. And I think it's going to take superior coaching staffs to be able, as you say, Sam, to get people off the mat.
Yeah, one of the things that I'll be wondering about, not really being able to, ascertain how it was really done at other schools is how schools manage the downtime. To your point, Steve, I mean, you look 2 weeks into the season and you see teams that are already over. You also see teams that are battered and bruised like Michigan. And so you wonder, what was it like? How did they handle? Now, we know that Michigan went hard all the way through. They went hard all the way through without any off time. Is there a cumulative effect to that? Is that something that they're feeling right now? That other schools do it the same way? That is going to be one of the things that I hope to be able to kind of dig into and find out and kind of compare. Was that an issue for this team that is just, for whatever reason? I mean, you look at the game against Michigan State. That's just going to be the game against Michigan State is the one that's going to stand out to me. It's like, what is going on? How do you lose that game? And then to just not even really be competitive. You guys, if you watched this last week, I didn't think they were going to beat Wisconsin. I think there was a chance in hell for the most part they were going to beat Wisconsin in that game. I had Wisconsin having a 14-point victory, but I thought it was going to be more competitive than it was. So why wasn't it? One of the things that I hope to find out is how did they compare, the when the season was postponed and what they were doing, how much practicing and whatever they were doing during that time versus what other teams were doing at that time as well. I think that would be very interesting to see and analyze.
So Michigan went hard at it from June, 100% into it, and then they were out of the Big Ten East race. What's your natural reaction to that? I mean, take it to your jobs, people. Think about your jobs where you are crunching. Now, you do an 8-hour workday. Well, now I'm doing a 12-hour workday, and I'm doing it for a goal in mind. And then it didn't work. But you still got to keep moving on. It's a tough adjustment period. So I'm wondering if these players have given in. And again, this is not just a Michigan problem. It is a Penn State problem. It is a Minnesota problem. They did again win last night. The only thing that pokes a hole in that series, Sam, was the Iowa Hawkeyes. As at 0-2, they found a way. They found a way to get remotivated and to move on. And I think these other teams that are doing well didn't have those big expectations to begin with. And the more they won, the more they trusted one another, and the more they believed in their coaches as well.
Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the offensive play of the game, brought to you by the Ticket's real estate partner, Matt Dejanovich. You'll hear it on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. Coming up next, Sam's recruiting roundup to recap what happened last weekend when the Michigan recruits held their own big unofficial recruiting weekend. Stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
7-3 Penn State over Iowa as we go to the second quarter, and Wisconsin-Northwestern are tied at 7 with a minute and change to go in the first quarter.
Yeah, so Graham Mertz threw a long touchdown to
Hawkeyes.
DK, I think.
Steve says touchdown Hawkeyes. My computer hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah, they just scored a moment ago. Iowa just scored a little bit ago. They're going for the PAT right now. And it's officially 10-7 Iowa right now.
There you go.
So I'm surprised that I don't have the score via upstairs, because upstairs the game is on. And if I hear people screaming, I would think Iowa scored. If I hear stomping of feet from one room to another, I think something would have happened the other way.
Interesting score from around the country. Late first quarter, it's still very early, but UCF is up 14-3 over Cincinnati down in Orlando.
Yeah, so I don't expect to see Ryan Hayes either. So
no Hayes.
No Mayfield.
No Mayfield.
No Vistardis.
No Vistardis. No Quiddy Pay. Okay.
Yeah, this is looking good.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, look, man, Vistardis has been, you could tell he's been banged up the last couple of weeks. So I mean, to me, it's about time that we see some Zach Carpenter, you really don't have anything to lose at this point, to see if all that strength that we heard all about during, doing winter conditioning and during practice, before he had his health issue. Let's see what it looks like on the football field. I mean, it can't. This is kind of my thing. It can't get worse. Let's see.
Steve can't be. Steve could be on the YouTube stream, but Steve, it's not you, Steve. Not that Steve.
Stevie D.
Stevie D in Dallas. Yeah, he could. He'd be fine on this platform, but yeah, not the radio platform. No, that would be we couldn't afford that.
Okay, we're back in about a minute.
Tyler Goodson with the touchdown.
Hi, Gracie and my parents. I assume they're watching.
Hi.
They are up 10-7. I think Graham Mertz.
He got sacked and gave the ball up to Northwestern. There you go.
With our combined strength, we can be able to tell you what's happening across all the games across the country.
Something like that. Steve's reading it on his screen. I'm reading it on Steve's glasses, so that's really how I'm reading it at the same time. Just playing, Mr. Clarke. Just playing.
They're all blurry now.
Oh, just playing, Steve.
I know.
We have fun here.
But I'm still in the bottom square next to Miz, if you can't see.
Oh, man. So
All right.
Here,
10 seconds. Stand by.
random commercial thought, and I know we have 30 seconds, and you won't have to shut my
Do we
mic
have
down.
30 seconds?
You gave me a minute cue at 30 seconds ago. Never mind. Another topic, another time. It was all football anyway.
All right. Stand by.
Standing by.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Having fun here on the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff. If you can't, or if you haven't been, join us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or WTKA.com/countdown. We're here on Ticket TV and always having just a little more fun during the breaks, and we're having a lot of fun on air. So those breaks are they're a lot of fun here on the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff. We're brought to you by Key Bank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. It's now time for our recruiting roundup, which is brought to you by the law offices of Joseph A. Simon. And man, despite what happened on the football field last weekend, it was quite and with recruiting shut down now through April 15th, at least when it comes to contact, it was quite an unusual recruiting weekend last weekend, Sam, and had quite unusual results as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess responses, feedback. I think people.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, people would equate result with commitment, which could be coming up here in the not too distant future.
It did help reaffirm some commitments. So there's results.
It did. It's one of the most surreal recruiting coverage experiences I've had, because you watch Michigan get destroyed like they did last week when top recruits from across the country are on campus, and you just expect that is going to at least influence, if not completely turn off, at least influence their view of Michigan in a negative way. And it just didn't, at least not with what they're saying. Now, maybe they're feeling something different, but I've made it a point to not just talk to the kids about what they're thinking themselves, but to talk to the other kids about what they were hearing from other kids on the visit, to talk to their parents. What was so-and-so saying? And talk to other parents about what they heard parents and what they heard other kids saying. And amazingly enough, those recruits that were on campus, you had a number of commitments. You had J.J. McCarthy leading the way, and Rod Moore, and Tristan Bounds, and Tommy Dolman, and Christian Dixon. Some of these guys you heard on the air last week setting an impressive tone about the strength of their commitments, regardless of the current circumstance, feeling like, at least this is what they're saying, they're feeling and they're conveying, that it's an anomaly, that we're going to be a part of the change. And using that tone, that vibe that they had with one another, and spreading it to the recruits. So coming out of that weekend, you got 5-star corners in Will Johnson and Damani Jackson, who are like, man, we could come here and we come here, we can start. That's number one. We come here, we can start right away. And we could be a big part of a turnaround here. Now, you got some unique circumstances with those two kids, those two 5-star corners. Will Johnson, his dad played at Michigan. His mom went to Michigan too, as a Michigan grad as well. So he has been born and raised a Wolverine. His parents have made it a point to try to not let their background influence him too much, to not let that be the reason. If you go to Michigan, it's going to be because you like it. And Ohio State is very much in play, very much up there for him. But he came here last week, and it's like, man, seeing the other guys that are going to be here, being around some of the other recruits that are talking like they might be here too, did a real thing for him. I think Michigan is on top for Will Johnson coming out of that weekend. And then Damani Jackson, born and raised his entire life, his dad has been telling him Michigan, Michigan, Michigan. His dad, Randy, born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, has loved Michigan his entire life, has gotten that impressed upon Damani. And they've always loved it from afar, though. They both had never been here, and they were just, that first time, Steve, you walked on the field at the big house, that feeling that you felt, Ira, that feeling that you felt the first time, that kind of the rubber knees, the butterflies. It's like, man, I've been watching this my whole life, and you get that feel. That was them last week. And then you pair that with the other guys kind of giving off that vibe. And Damani came away talking about, man, I can make a difference here. He admits he thought long and hard about committing, and he said some very strong things that I chose to leave out of the articles and the commentary, because I don't think that in retrospect, if he were to look back on it, he would want it to be known how strongly he was considering committing and why he may have held back. But I think Michigan is on top for him coming out of that visit too. Now, can they stay there? Can you get those commitments, and then can you keep them? I mean, those are questions that remain to be seen. All I know is, for a recruiting weekend that you thought would have disastrous results, when you watch Michigan just get demoralized on the football field last week, had anything but. It was not disastrous. They actually came out ahead of the game compared to where they were before those visits took place.
Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the Drive of the Game, brought to you by Brighton Ford. You hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Coming up next, we kick off hour number 2 talking about Michigan's opponent tonight. We meet the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. So stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
All right, so let's look at some of these questions here. What do we got?
There you go. I got one for you, Sam.
Yeah, so, Rumler's one of the strongest guys on the team, but they're just guys that have just passed him. And what's the best way to put it? I think they're just guys that have been able to, even though it may not look like it on the football field, they have guys that have just been able to be more consistent in practice. I think that's the best way to put it. With Trente Jones, I think it's just all mental. I mean, he's a guy that will look like an All-American for 2 plays. This is just how it's conveyed to me. Look like an All-American for 2 plays, and then when he makes a mistake, it wrecks him. And so, the charge with him is, making him deal with failure a lot better. Deal with failure is even the wrong word. Mistakes. Deal with mistakes and setbacks in performance. Deal with those a lot better so they don't wreck his performance, because he has tremendous athletic talent. And so, again, you get to the point where you do ask, might it be prudent just to throw him out there and see? But I think the flip side of that is, if he is struggling when he makes mistakes in practice mentally, what's going to happen to him if you put him in a game and he struggles that way? Will it wreck him even more mentally? I think, when I say play the younger guys, I'm talking about guys that have at least shown in practice that is really, really close. And there are guys like that. Zach Carpenter is a guy like that. So, I'm thinking Zach Carpenter. I'm thinking Trevor Keegan. I'm looking at defense, and I'm thinking a guy like Khalil Mullings. I'm looking at corner. Any of those guys, basically any of the guys at corner, give them a shot. Especially the guys that show you the kind of mental toughness that you want to see. It's looking like
Bears.
The only thing I'm kind of missing is a cigar or Polish sausage. Ditka.
Yeah, that's
beers.
Mrs. more bold.
I'll take the.
I can't just do the mustache only thing.
I'll take the Ditka over what Jamie and Dennis have been calling me. They've been calling me Paul Blart,
so
undercover cop.
Paul Blart, mall cop,
undercover.
Yeah.
Because the hair is getting all shaggy as well too. I've been putting it up, and they've been calling. Jamie's also been calling me Kung Fu Panda. But everything changed.
Show the profile for those. Show the profile.
Yeah, tell
Jamie.
See
what they're talking about. Show the profile.
Tell Jamie to stop.
There you go. There's your Kung Fu Panda
in his drawers, man. How about that?
But but apparently in my defense, when the basketball schedule came out, I went from being Paul Blart Mall Cop to Tom Selleck
Okay.
real quick.
Take that trade. Take that trade every day.
I took it, and I think the mustache actually got bushier the minute that I was called that. I just went.
Now all you need is like a 1985 Ferrari to top it off.
Well, I mean, I do have Hawaiian print shirts at home.
Start with the Tigers hat and work, and then work your way to the, work your way to the Ferrari.
The minute I make that kind of money, I'll let you guys know.
quick story, guys. I loathe costume parties. I just hate dressing up. And I had to go to an 80s party a number of years ago, and I dressed up as Tom Selleck. I wore the Hawaiian shirt, tiger hat, big thick mustache. People took a couple of pictures of me, sent it out over the internet, and the response from my mother was, "Were you Cheech or Chong?"
The question now what I have is, did you have the props that would make them think you were Cheech or Chong? Did you have some?
Hey man, listen, don't have to be a narc about it, man. Okay.
But we got a question here from Johnny M. Go Blue. What's up with Braden McGregor? You remember he tore his ACL as a senior, and
stand by, guys. I'll let you wrap that one up.
Or he had a knee injury. I guess I shouldn't get specific. He had a knee injury as a senior, and he's been. It's just not all the way back.
Back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hour number 2 of the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV. And this is the time of the show where I usually drop in some Rutgers jokes, and usually it's warranted and comes from a position of strength because, well, they're Rutgers. But instead tonight we have 1-3 Michigan at 1-3 Rutgers. The loser will likely play Penn State for 7th place, the bottom in the Big Ten East. I mentioned 2014 earlier in the show. I've mentioned 24 on some post-game shows early in the weeks as well. I really hope, at least for 1 week, Steve Clarke and Sam Webb, that I'm not talking about 2014 after tonight's game. All right, Steve Clarke, tell us about Greg Schiano, Rutgers, and their quarterback not named Gary Nova.
It's true, Ira. The thing is, I've been on the bandwagon, leading the charge, the guy with the baton and talking about Rutgers jokes and ripping them throughout the year since they've been in the Big Ten. But this is a very scary situation for me because Rutgers will be very competitive against Michigan this week. Both won their opener. Rutgers beat Michigan State on the same day that Michigan won in Minnesota. They've lost their game since then. But there is a different feeling about them, and there's a lot of different things that you notice about them. And one of them, first of all, is that they have a credible quarterback. Noah Vedral just does normal quarterback things that you haven't seen from a Rutgers quarterback in the past 5 years. Now, we have to be real here that Vedral isn't making Nebraska rue the day that they, chose to start Adrian Martinez over him, or that they let him go to be a quarterback over at Rutgers. He's also not on the verge of being on the All Big Ten team. Vedral is 11th in the Big Ten in passing efficiency. He's also
hasn't played Michigan yet, though, Steve.
And he threw 3 second-half interceptions last Saturday. Quite frankly, Vedral could have thrown more interceptions. But he had a few, what was he thinking facepalm moments throughout that game. But at the same time, he also threw a couple of dimes to Bo Melton. One of those was on Rutgers' opening drive, a 4th and 3 from the 29-yard line, playing single-man coverage. Melton got the separation. Vedral threw it perfectly over its top. And that just kind of shows you that Rutgers isn't going through the motions like they used to. They're not trying to play as not to be embarrassed. They're not playing 3 downs and punting. They're not continuously trying to run through a brick wall because they can't pass the ball either. This is a team that is playing with some gumption, and that opening drive against Illinois is just proof of that. 4th and 3 from the 29. Don't settle for the field goal, and don't even try to throw a short pass for the first down. They went for it all, and they capitalized on that. Melton got another 29-yard pass on a dime from Vedral during that game as well. But again, had some poor decision making in the second half that really cost them against Illinois. And there's talk about this week about whether the Scarlet Knights would go back to the well and go to Artur Satowski, who's from the Michigan area. Believe it or not, Sam, even he got better. He was 9 of 13 in the Ohio State game. And there's also Johnny Langdon. He's a jack of all trades type of quarterback. He's built like a slot receiver. He passed for a touchdown against the Buckeyes. He runs the Wildcat, is on the field together with Vedral as a rusher, as a decoy, and as a pass catcher. Johnny Langdon is going to play on the field at some point, probably not as the starting quarterback, but Michigan's going to have to pay attention to detail when he is on the field.
Look, boy, I wish we weren't in this place. I said earlier in the show, we're used to making jokes about Rutgers. I've made all kind of jokes about Jersey football this year. Talking about the Jets and the Giants and Rutgers. And here we have Michigan State, and the Lions looking just as bad, or almost as bad. Unfortunately for Michigan, you come in this game and you look at where Rutgers has playmakers. And, one of the places, and I just saw a message from Dan Williams in our comment section here, and he said Dwumfer is going to be licking his chops. That's one of the places where I see a playmaker for them. And I feel like more broadly, when you think about this game, a lot of this comes down to coming off of the loss last week. If the challenges to guys' pride are really going to be met, because with all the struggles, they're both 1-3, and no disrespect intended to Rutgers. Michigan has been a more talented football team. And if they lose this game, it would be hard for me to look at that outcome and say that it's not reflective of something bigger than they just played better today. It'd say more to me if they lose this game. So as much of a must win as I've seen here recently, when it comes to what it says more broadly, you lose against Rutgers in the same season where you lost to a terrible Michigan State team. And I think the question, the phrase, trusting, what do you trust? Again, I think the trust factor will have been very low if they lose to Rutgers today.
Well, Sam, I think that's already happened with some of the games that are being already played. Michigan State was a sign of that. There's been other games in the past. Michigan is generally the more talented team based on recruiting and everything, the cumulative effect over most of the teams they play. But it's just not showing up on the field. We take a look at more about the Rutgers offense. A guy that is playing extremely well for them right now is a receiver. That's Bo Melton. Talk about the 4th and 3, 29-yard touchdown pass. Melton's 5th in the Big Ten in receiving yards. He's one spot ahead of Ronnie Bell in that category. He's tied for 2nd in the conference with 4 touchdown catches, and he had a career high 150 yards last week against the Fighting Illini. Another guy is Isaiah Pacheco, the running back. He's 5th in Big Ten in total rushing yards. He's fast enough to turn the corner on a stretch play. Pacheco had a $143 with a long TD run against Michigan in 2018, 213 all-purpose yards in 2019. The only Rutgers player to score against Michigan in the last 2 games that they played. So now you have a credible quarterback. You have a guy that runs the ball decently against Michigan with prior success. And you got one skilled receiver that can do some damage against any team. They have the makings of having certain things happen. And you've got an offensive coordinator that came from Oklahoma State and the Big 12, who's now coaching you as your OC. So things are turning around slowly for the Rutgers football program. But I think the big thing that people are going to notice when they watch Rutgers versus Michigan is that Rutgers is going to show some fight. They are going to show some fight, and they are going to be able to get their way in a few occasions. And it's going to be up to the Michigan defense to respond to those things. And in the past, when things don't go their way, they don't respond very well, and they let things snowball. They cannot let them do that. Otherwise, Rutgers feels even more empowered and have more moxie than what they should show for the talent that they have on their team.
And this is why I mentioned Dwumfer. I know we're talking about Rutgers offense, but against Michigan's defense. I mean, I know Michael Dwumfer did not have a very noteworthy Michigan career, but they could use Michael Dwumfer right now. And I think that Michael Dwumfer feels like he, that there wasn't as much of a path, or there wasn't as much of a desire, for him as maybe Rutgers had for him. I think he feels that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, to Dan Williams' point, he's going to be licking his chops today. And so you hope that the guys that we look to on the interior that were left behind, you hope that those guys can have their best games of the season, because they're going to need it. You can be heartened a little bit by it, lost in all of the setbacks, all of the bad play in the first half of that Wisconsin, well, I guess throughout that Wisconsin game, but in the first half, was you saw Vincent Gray make some plays, Steve. I mean, you look back at the tape, it's like, well, here is Vincent Gray making a few plays in succession in the run game, in the pass game. Can he carry that over today is a big deal. Better chance of him doing so if they get anything up front, anything in the way of pressure up front. They got a little bit one time from Carlo Kemp coming off the edge last week. You aren't facing an offensive line nearly as good. Hopefully those guys can have a little more success and take some of that pressure off of defense, who will have points scored. I mean, this is Rutgers. They are in much to write home about. I know you mentioned Bo Melton having some nice stats. They just don't wow me, but you don't have to have a wow offense to put up numbers against Michigan this year. Case in point, Michigan State.
Well, the thing is, these guys are putting up numbers against their opponents in the Big Ten. I don't usually, in the past, when I have previewed Rutgers before, do I have to mention that a Rutgers particular player is in the top 5 in the Big Ten in any type of category? If anything, I mention where they are in the top in the category. It's at the bottom of the list. The quarterback has the worst passing efficiency, and it's by 30 points less than the number 13 guy. That's what I'm used to doing when I'm previewing a Rutgers team. Now I'm previewing a Rutgers team that actually has a player or two that's among the Big Ten leaders. And when I've watched them on the field in the 3 games that I've seen them, they look like they actually have some fire, and they actually look like they can produce. Again, do they deserve their 1-3 record? Yeah, they deserve to be 1-3. That's for sure. But this is just different than what they have been, and I think there is some trust in the direction that they're going. This is, again, a team that didn't have many expectations going into it. They have a little bit of confidence that they can actually play teams close.
Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the Gem of the Game, brought to you by Lewis Jewelers. You'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Coming up next, more on the Scarlet Knights. Stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Any screaming from your house, Steve?
None.
17-7 Iowa.
Nothing.
Tell them to step their game up. Maybe they're watching you and you don't know it. They're not actually watching the game. They're watching you.
Or they're just sitting there going,
No.
This should be expected with an 0-4 Penn State team.
No.
Yeah, maybe there's that.
Wow, 17-7. Okay, so Sargent got a
6:30 to
touchdown
go,
run.
yeah.
Right. So Dan, he said if Vistardis is out, who plays center, that would be Zach Carpenter, Dan.
Who we thought was going to be the starting center before the season and before Vistardis' rise.
So how about this Wisconsin game, guys? Wisconsin
7-7,
Northwestern.
5:47 to go.
Here's the drive charts, okay? 2 touchdowns, 2 punts, 3 fumbles.
And an interception just a moment ago by Northwestern.
Northwestern blew it at the goal line, though. They should
Well,
be 14-7 right now.
Yeah, Northwestern just picked the ball off. So
They just got to pick. That wasn't Mertz's fault, though.
no, that was a couple of boinkers.
Yeah, that was Nolan Rucci's big brother. Nolan Rucci, 5-star offensive lineman from Pennsylvania. His brother Hayden just let the ball bounce off his hands. Oh, no. It didn't bounce off. Sorry, Hayden Rucci. My bad. It was tipped by a Northwestern linebacker.
Man, you just threw that kid under the bus, throw some extra tracks over him. I'm not sure you can bring that back.
That was the kid who, I said he's from Letitz, Pennsylvania.
From where?
I said he's from Letitz, Pennsylvania. His mom and dad said we are not from Letitz. We from Lidditz. From Lidditz, Pennsylvania, not Lititz.
You just did a Sean Connery Saturday Night Live Jeopardy thing there, Sam.
did. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Alex, I'll
I don't
take.
call it.
that
I
was
know
classic. That one was classic.
What was classic?
When Sam gets corrected in pronunciations on particular, or when he tries
Oh,
There was another
like
one,
that.
too. I can't remember what the other one was. Hey, Ruth.
yeah, I got to practice this one guy from Rutgers on the defense saying his name again.
Devin Bush Sr. is with the he's with handles recruiting for Ole Miss. He
1
went
minute.
MVP.
Gotcha, Miz. Tell us when there's like 20 seconds left, and then Sam or Steve will want to start telling us something. Something will pop up that they'll be ready to go. Happens with Sam and I all the time in breaks. We'll be like, back in 20. Oh, by the way, did I tell you? And you're like, I guess I'll
I have
tell
this
you
long story I need to share with you right now.
Like, how many seconds we got? We're back in 5. I got this
Oh,
long.
wait.
later. Pause the radio. One more story to tell.
It's like, play another return bed, Miz. You got it. Put some more PSAs in. Okay.
Sorry, real Trey Conrad, but he's not eligible yet.
He'll be here in January. That makes you
Well,
feel
where's here? Where's here exactly? U of M's going to be pretty quiet. Where
True,
exactly is
you're right.
here?
I think
What is early enrolling? It's an interesting question we can ask. We're going to have to start asking people. What does early enrolling, being an early enrollee, mean this year?
All right, 10 seconds.
All right, standing by. See, you can't ask that question as we're coming back from a break, so we're going to stand by.
Back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Win the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgate at home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light. It's easy. Just go to WTKA.com/countdown and click for your chance to win. It's the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgate at home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light and your friends here at Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. This is the Key Bank Countdown at Kickoff. And we're continuing with our Meet the Scarlet Knights portion of the show. We now go to the defensive side of the ball. We do know one name. Sam has mentioned him a couple of times on the show so far. A former Wolverine, Michael Dwumfor, is up front for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Steve, take us through the rest of the Rutgers defense.
And this will be the time where Sam starts talking about the offense.
But I was making a point about Michigan.
I know. Look, hey, Michael Dwumfor is the most talked about person you want to know about on the defensive line. He's going to be wearing number 99 if you need help spotting him when he's on the field today. He and Julius Turner, those are two guys who can really light it up in the interior. These are two guys you wish Michigan had in their interior lineup right now. With no disrespect to Carlo Kemp, Michael Dwumfor is getting into the line of scrimmage. Julius Turner is getting in the backfield. He's tied for 5th in the Big Ten tackles for a loss. Watching these guys play, they are really quick off the snap. Sometimes they can get into some offsides issues as well, but they are beating their guys one-on-one off the snap quite a bit, and it's a disruptive thing. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a tackles for a loss, but it means the play is in trouble to start with. And then you have to start, free flowing. What do I do next? And we've seen that in some Michigan film, have we not, Sam? Somebody makes a mistake off the line of scrimmage, and it's like, okay, now what do I do? And which way should I go? And unfortunately, most of these players, because they're inexperienced, Sam, for Michigan, are not having a very good plan B executed by other people on the line or the running back making a decision himself. So that is one thing to really watch, is to watch those two guys in the interior. Are they going to make life difficult for the Michigan offensive lineman, and therefore also for the running back who may be getting the ball? Again, another situation when we're talking about game planning, Sam, is to try to throw it outside the tackle box on a short pass play, and then hope your receivers can block downfield. But on the other mid-level of this group, you've got a linebacker named Tyshawn Fogg, who is the second leading tackler right now in the Big Ten. And I really watch him with a lot of interest because he is very quick. He can change direction on a dime, had some critical stops last week against Illinois, had 13 tackles altogether. I think he's got great anticipation. He's active. He can shed blockers. He made the All Big Ten team last year, believe it or not. And then how about this guy, Sam? This is a challenge for all the announcers out there. Olakunle Fatukasi. He is the leading tackler in the Big Ten. So we talked about, thank you, Ira.
A week's worth of practice has come to
got
fruition. Well
finally
done.
got it without hesitation.
But now can you do it again as you restart this bit?
Olakunle Fatukasi, leading tackler in the Big Ten. Second most tackles for the loss in the Big Ten. He's got a forced fumble. He's got 2 recoveries on his 2020 resume. Sam, so again, now I'm talking about defensive players on Rutgers who are actually making plays. This is just such a difference than when talking about Rutgers before. Usually I'll say somebody about a Rutgers player who's got a lot of passes broken up because they're targeting him with every single pass that an offense would try to throw at them. But this is not the case. They have some players that are doing some things. And then you have Mohamed Turay, not related to Kamoko Turay back in 2014, but they do the same thing. They sack the quarterback. He's tied for second in the Big Ten in quarterback sacks. He also forced 2 fumbles on Michigan State. When watching that state game, I thought the Rutgers defense was very good at what I call the wrap and rip technique, where one defender wraps up the player, and then a second defender comes in and he tries to rip the ball out. Rutgers is going to try to do that with Michigan, especially with the young guys on offense, trying to fight and force and do extra about getting those extra yards because those yards are getting harder and harder to come by. That one guy wraps and the other guy rips. So Michigan players, watch out if you're trying to be a hero fighting for too many extra yards.
Yeah, when we get to the matchup segment, I mean, just to, kind of give you the preview to spoil the movie before we get to it, I'm going D-line, O-line, Rutgers D-line, Michigan O-line. And Michael Dwumfer is a huge reason why. Michael Dwumfer, it feels like he wasn't, like the ship at Michigan had sailed, that he was not wanted here very much anymore, and at least not as wanted as much as he was or is at Rutgers. And he has something to prove in this game. He's been telling his former roommates all week, what he's going to do. Now, again, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's dominated in the Big Ten. Here's where you should be somewhat concerned, though. In all of this discussion about guys who look great in practice and not translating to the football field for Michigan, right? We've seen that. We've seen that all year. You said so-and-so look good in practice. Well, they did. Just hasn't translated to the field. Well, you know who used to look good in Michigan's practice all the damn time? Michael Dwumfer. This is one of those times where you hope that carries over where it does not translate. Good practice performances against Michigan. You better hope it doesn't translate today because that dude used to destroy in practice. You had coaches coming up. You remember Greg Madison used to come up in press conferences talking about Michael Dwumfer, and Don Brown was talking about all these guys, Dwumfer. And then we have to answer questions. I thought you guys said Michael Dwumfer was going to do so-and-so. No, we said he looked good in practice. We didn't tell you what he was going to do in games. Again, problem now is he's doing some of those things in games now, Steve. So if he's doing some of those things in games, and he used to be very successful against the guys in practice that he's going to play against today, really doesn't give you a warm, fuzzy feeling about how that matchup is going to go.
Again, every head coach will tell you, got to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. Right now, there seems to be an edge on the Rutgers defensive side of the field against the Michigan offensive line at this point, in part due to injuries. Ira, don't usually talk about special teams, but there's a few things to talk about here.
We do when games are expected to be close.
Yeah, well, here we go. Aaron Crook Shanks, former Wisconsin player. He earned second team
what's his
All-Big
last
Ten
name?
honors for being a kick returner. He transferred to Wisconsin, hoping to see the field on offense, and now he starts.
Steve, what's his last name again?
Crookshank.
Okay, good thing he's not a kicker.
No, he's a kick returner.
Just saying.
But I see your point. Rutgers debuted a new kicker. He's fresh from the soccer team. 2 for 2 on field goals last week, 2 for 2 on extra points. Their punter is a rugby-style punter, which always you hold your breath with the rugby-style punter on both sides of the ball because sometimes it looks like he's going to run for the first down, and other times he runs into a block kick. But both sides seem to hold their breath. And it wouldn't be Rutgers if I couldn't find one thing that makes you go only at Rutgers. They mismanaged a field goal attempt at the end of the first half in which they could not get the kickoff on time. The player went out of bounds. An official questionable call about whether he was actually out of bounds and fumbled the football or not, and how you rule it. And one referee ruled for the clock to stop, and the other guy rolled it to go. And Rutgers was too slow to get on the football field to put on their special teams. They didn't even look like they sprinted on the field. They just kind of slowly trotted out, and they watched the seconds go by, and that was it before the snap. So it wouldn't be Rutgers without some sort of mismanagement between coaches and players' mistake. And again, the Rutgers game came down to a last-second field goal in which Illinois won the game by 3. Will we have a little bit more of that against Michigan? We can only hope so, Sam.
All right, so that last part notwithstanding, Steve, these last couple of segments as we talked about Rutgers, you were giving quite the endorsement for Chris Ash to become a head coach once again in college football.
Well, I'd like to see Chris Ash coach again in the Big Ten somewhere so that Michigan can beat him.
Sam misses Chris Ash.
I sure do.
We all do.
I just miss the days where we could chalk this up as a surefire blowout, and we just can't do that today.
No, we can't. Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show, brought to you by Retirement Income Solutions and presented by Alta Equipment. You'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. Coming up next, we shift back from talking about North Jersey's 1-3 college football team to our 1-3 college football team. Stay with us. This is the Key Bank Countdown and Kickoff live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Man, just threw the ball right to the defender.
I think Russ is onto something. What things to watch? The battle in the trenches, Michigan quarterback play, and Harbaugh's mask.
Graham
Hey, Russ.
3 turnovers today.
I know, Russ.
Here's one for you, Sam.
Joe Milton. I just think the leash is going to be shorter.
I was just going to say, it's going to be a little bit shorter, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm somewhat discouraged about Wisconsin's playing today. I thought they were.
I told you, but I mean, again, Graham Mertz didn't play great last week.
No, but their defense was fantastic.
I think their defense has been pretty good today.
It's 7-7. That Wisconsin offense, man.
Graham Mertz, 3 turnovers today. Has just been. I mean, I think it was telling. I mean, so much focus on watching Joe's missed throws. They were just first you had that horrible interception that he threw. That was his worst throw of the year, but it just overshadowed the times that Graham Mertz was errant. And you see in a game where they can't rush for 340 yards, you see that coming home to bite him. He hit a big pass play down the football field in this game, but for them to win this game, for them to beat Ohio State, he's going to have to show that he can make plays down the football field consistently, and he just hasn't been able to do that in this game.
So I got a question for all of us that are still on the camera and those watching us here on YouTube. Off-book question. Got Iowa beating Penn State 17-7. It's in Happy Valley. Keep this up. Penn State's 0-5. My question for you all is, what's the harder game? Or how about, where is more likely Michigan going to win? At Rutgers or to Penn State?
It's an interesting.
Now, look, I mean, Penn State's the more talented team. We know that. We know that by far, but we're talking about trajectory again. Where everybody's at is Rutgers now. If this Iowa-Penn State thing keeps up and the Nittany Lions are 0-5, is Penn State now the easier game of the two? Makes me think. Miz?
Could be. You certainly got to feel like, from a coaching perspective. Rutgers is going to be harder, right?
Yeah.
Got to feel that way. So
I wonder if Penn State would actually be the easier of the two games now.
it could be.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to dust it. I don't think we're going to see Hayes or Mayfield today. Can Zach get 15 plus carries? I don't think so.
I'm trying to give you guys optimism. I'm not a party pooper.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if one of the tailbacks gets 15 carries. I'll settle for double digits for one of them.
I'm about to say, how about can the running backs combine for 15 carries?
Right.
Can they get over 43 plays or whatever it was in the last game? I'd like to get to, in the 70s, but that's being greedy because I think they're averaging like 48 plays combined in their last 2 games, and it might be like that in the last 3 or 4.
Cursed by brand, huh, Theus? I don't know. Jawan's doing okay.
Ira,
it is a basketball brand, Sam.
Ira, you stepped out.
10 seconds.
What's the easier game, Penn State or Rutgers for Michigan at this point?
Could be Penn State.
All right, here we go. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff, brought to you by Key Bank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. And guys, last week, I was told that our game of True False on the show last week was overly depressing. So no True False today. I can't imagine it'd be a whole lot better than it was last week. So we're going to go back to talking about the current state of Michigan football recruiting because I'd rather talk about that. I'd rather talk about what happened last weekend on recruiting than anything else. So because honestly, it's a bright spot, right, Sam? We talked about it earlier in the show. We heard from J.J. McCarthy and the Dixons and Rod Moore and Sia right before the game and before on the pregame show last week. And we saw J.J. McCarthy on Twitter after the game. We see that the committed guys seem very solid and uncommitted players seem very interested in coming anyway. And so it's always nice to have that future optimism when the current isn't. And obviously 2020, out beyond football, 2020 hasn't been exactly the best year. So I like the conversation about what happened last week, and I think we have a moment here that we can expand on a little bit more because there's really exciting news coming out of what was, and we joked about it. What year was it when Michigan went to Rutgers and they had the big recruiting event and they had a whole bunch of kids there and it was this big deal and Michigan blew them out and we made a lot of jokes about it. Well, Michigan didn't play very well at home last week. But the recruiting doesn't look like it's taking a hit. In fact, Sam, it looks like it's exactly the opposite.
Well, at least that weekend. I mean, they did lose Rayshawn Benny the week before now to Michigan State. So you just feel like that wasn't a performance thing as much as it was. He has a teammate going there, and they are hitting kids hard with the extension question. And so that is another reason why last week was so surreal to see kids reacting in the way they were reacting to Michigan getting blown out, because not because I was thinking that the outcome of one game is going to sway a kid just based on how they look in that contest, right? You're feeling down because Michigan looked bad in one game, looked bad on national television. No, it's not that. I think it's that it starts to give teeth to this recruiting pitch that other schools are coming at these recruits with and commits with. It's like, hey, do you know if the coaches are going to be there? Do you know if I'm going to be around? Can you say those guys are going to be there? What's up? Why haven't they extended Jim Harbaugh yet? They're hitting guys with that. So to have Michigan get beaten in the manner in which they were beaten and to not have that be a big deal, that extension talk be a big deal coming out of it, is just a huge, huge plus for them. And I think one of the reasons why is, again, J.J. McCarthy. Look, let me be clear when I say this. I think J.J. McCarthy and his family fully expect for this coaching staff to be here. So please do not misconstrue what I am saying. When I say J.J. McCarthy's coming to Michigan regardless of who the coach is, that was made very, very clear to me. So people keep asking me, well, what if they have a different coach? First of all, none of these recruits are expecting for there to be a different coach. But if that were to happen, if it were to happen that Jim Harbaugh were to go to the pros, J.J. McCarthy is coming to Michigan. I mean, I talked to his family about it, and they were adamant that they are strongly committed to Michigan. Love this coaching staff, want to play for this coaching staff. They believe in this coaching staff despite what's going on the football field right now. But if the unforeseen in their eyes happen, and I was told this unequivocally, he is coming to Michigan. So for that feeling, for that sentiment to be coming from the centerpiece of the class, and for the centerpiece of the class to be the quarterback, has weight. And I just think that if they hold on to all of these recruits and they get some of these other guys, some of these big time 5 stars, then they're going to owe him a debt of gratitude, a huge thanks, because he will have had a huge hand in it. The biggest hand I've seen a single player have in recruiting a class, and the class beyond it even, since Drew Henson, in my opinion.
Can we put a statue up?
I mean, you got to do it on a football field first, right? You know what someone said last week, and tell me if you guys agree with this, about how he is as a kid. I mean, set aside the player discussion for a moment, and let's just talk about his aura, the vibe he gives off. Someone said last week, and I think it was on one of these comment streams here, said he has some Tebow to him, not as a player, totally different quarterbacks. And we could only hope that he would touch the kind of success that Tim Tebow had as a quarterback in Florida. But when you talk about how he sounds, what he says, the mature perspective he has on things, it does sound Tebow-esque. I mean, that wasn't my comparison. That was what someone else said when they said it, Steve. I thought about it, said, you know what? Yeah, that he does give off that vibe, and that's the kind of vibe that the other kids are catching from.
Well, I mean, you got a guy who's obviously mature. You're seeing a guy who's taking things into perspective, and he's a glass half full type of guy. So that's what you want. I mean, that, as a friend, as a leader, as a captain, or whatever. You can't always be looking at the dark side all the time. And so he's that. And I've seen other people like it. Let's see what he does here. But it's good to know that this isn't, the offensive lineman jewel of the class saying this. This is your quarterback, your future quarterback of the class that people have been waiting for a couple of years since his verbal commitment was given out.
All right, guys, that was a fun conversation. We're going to bring things back to the now on the football field for the Wolverines in the next break. Before we get to the break, or next segment, before we get to the break, we have an update on the scoreboard from Happy Valley. It's not very happy, but at halftime, it's Iowa 24, Penn State 7. And Steve, according to the sounds in your house, it should be 0-0, but it's 24-7 Iowa at the half. And with 11 seconds to go, Wisconsin has the ball, but they are down 14-7 with 11 seconds to go before half. Wisconsin does have it 1st and 10 from the Northwestern 41, so they're threatening to try to put some points on the board before halftime, but that's 14-7 Northwestern over Wisconsin, 11 seconds before the half. And as I said, Iowa up over Penn State 24-7. Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the Offensive Play of the Game, brought to you by the Ticket's real estate partner, Matt Dejanovic. You'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Coming up next, we're getting closer to kickoff. Michigan at Rutgers at 7:30 on BTN and right here. So stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Thanks, Tom.
And that's not going to happen. Wisconsin won't score.
Magnum PI. Miz, are you old enough to remember Magnum PI, man?
I mean, I was familiar with the show, yeah.
Wednesday, Ghost Rider. Wednesday, 4 o'clock.
He's talking,
Wednesday, Ghost Rider.
Hey, Sam, Miz is talking about the revamped Magnum PI.
No, whoa, no, come on.
That was like the time that we had an intern who Sam and I are talking about the Karate Kid. And he didn't bring up Ralph Macchio, and
was it
and
CJ or was it or was it Zach?
It was no, it was it was a while ago. And they brought up Jaden Smith, and it gets me every once in a while.
Because I remember how many times you told Zach how many the different movies he had to catch up on.
Zach had so many movies to catch up on.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question for you, Sam.
Question. I don't know. I don't. I would see him. I would give him a shot at nickel and play some Dax at corner. I would do that, but I think the the likeliest DB that we haven't seen a lot of to see time today is DJ Turner. I know he got a PI last week, but I think he's the guy that is most likely in line to receive PT. But I don't know what you have to lose giving Andre Selden a shot at nickel.
So, quick question out of curiosity: do you know when Penn State put the numbers on the side of their helmets this season?
When?
Yeah, have they ever?
They have. I'm not actually watching the game
because they got the numbers on the side of their helmets today. Maybe that's what's slowing them down. They got extra weight on their heads.
They're less aerodynamic.
Possibly.
Like Alabama numbers on the side of the head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or now like the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got a question from Dustin here. The
answer used to be a thing.
To your question, Dustin, is yes. Yes, you will. The leash will absolutely be shorter. Of that, I'm extremely confident. They went with him. I think they gave him a longer leash because while he had some bad moments in games, they weren't as sustained. I mean, it was his worst game by far. And so I think they were waiting for him to kind of shake especially coming out of the half. Maybe he gathers himself and gets it together and is not playing rattled out there on the football field. But the play they pulled him, I would have to find it. But the play they pulled him on, it was like, a coverage that he's read well before. I mean, he sees cover 2 well. And on this particular, based on the tape, I mean, he's misread some coverages or he's been late. Recognizing some coverages, but that's one that he has thrown some of his best passes. The drive routes that he threw against Indiana, both of those drive routes came against cover 2. One was for a touchdown. One was for a touchdown to Roman Wilson. The other was a long completion to
10 seconds.
Ronnie Bell. But
standing by.
Back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
This is the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV. We're brought to you by KeyBank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. And guys, it is the midway point of the Michigan football season. And when you get to the midway point and you're having a really good season, you have a lot of fun conversations. But when you're not having a good season, the conversations are more like the one we're about to have, which is what did you think about, positions and position groupings, et cetera, players going into the season? And then where do they stand now and how far differently are your impressions of those things? And, for this conversation, we've talked a lot in the last few weeks about the quarterback position, Sam. So we'll start there. What we thought about the quarterback position back in August and September versus where this is now that we are 4 games into this season, halfway through the year, how different those conversations are about the quarterback position.
Yeah, certainly thought that he, based on everything that they were saying in practice, thought that they would be a more proficient downfield passing team. I think that's the most glaring difference from what they say was going on in practice and what is going on in games. I mean, you listen to them. I mean, you heard the stories that Gaddis and Harbaugh told about this 70-yard pass play that he threw. He was drifting to his left and threw down the seam the other way, 70 yards in the air. I mean, they were raving. And the reason why I know what happened, because I heard about that from some of the guys. They were like, man, you wouldn't believe this play Joe made in practice. And that was like a consistent thing. It was not an embellishment from the coaches. He was doing that consistently in practice. So why isn't it happening in games? I think you could point to a few reasons. I think number one, we see a number of teams have success against Michigan's DBs. I think you have to take into account who you're having that success against, right? We also see that in this defense that Michigan was running the football against so successfully, well, we've seen other teams run the football successfully against this Michigan defense. So the amount of pressure that you put on Joe in practice is just totally different. And that's aside from it being forced of the stakes being different, right? practice, there's nothing really on. You're battling for a position, but it's not win-loss adversity like it is in games. But beyond that, you don't have a running game taking the stress off of him. You don't have downfield passing game, protection, allowing him to get the ball down here, taking stress off of him. And it magnifies when he makes mistakes, when the plays are there, when there are guys open down the football field, and he just overthrows them. When there are coverages that he is slow to read, it magnifies those things, and it gets you to where you are last week, where he wasn't as bad as some of the people in this comment section say he was against Michigan State and Indiana. He did more good things than bad in those games and was really good against Minnesota. But last week, he was bad. And so how does he respond to that? And how do the coaches respond to that? That is, to me, a big question heading into today's game. He responded well in practice. Will that translate to the game? And if it doesn't, how quickly will the coaches respond? Will they have the hook a lot quicker than they had last week? I think the answer to that question is yes.
I think a lot of roots to why the offense is not doing well generally comes back to one thing, and I've said it already before in this broadcast: the offensive line. If the offensive line can't open holes, I don't care what All-Americans you have at running back, they're not going to be able to perform. If you have an offensive line that can't pass protect, well, you can forget about 70-yard, fly balls down the field, because you're going to get sacked before you have a chance to get it. You got to have at least a 3-second window to be able to step into your throw and then throw it 70 yards down the field. If you only have 2 seconds before you're running for your life, or a second and a half, you're not getting a 70-yard pass down the field. If you're not getting pass protection, you're not giving time for a regular route for separation to happen. Your quarterback starts feeling a crunch, and he starts to panic. This is just natural. This is not a Joe thing. This is a quarterback thing. If you don't have the time, and you can't do the other thing, which is run the ball, and you can only rely on the pass, well, then the other teams start to know it. And other teams start playing tighter on your defense. Look at the 97 team. Michigan's defense could afford to play man single coverage in 97 because they knew the defensive line, such as Glenn Steele and Rob Renas, were going to get there. And they could gamble on things. They didn't have to worry about playing a soft zone. For Michigan's offense right now, if the offensive line can't protect, and look, you talk about expectations, Ira, you have 4 new offensive linemen, and thank goodness Jalen Mayfield came back. Oh, well, Jalen Mayfield's not playing because of an injury. So essentially at this point, you have 5 brand new offensive linemen, and one of those 5 that you had in the Minnesota game isn't playing either. Look, I'm not incredibly disappointed in the performance of where these guys have been, because you can't expect a lot from the new 5 guys that are in there. And again, because it's the offensive line and because it's as critical as the quarterback, everything else is going to suffer around you, including the strength of what we thought the offensive would be, the running game. The different combinations of backs and the different things that they could have done. You the power and Haskins, and you got the agility of Charbonnet, and you've got the experience of Evans, who can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. And I can go on, and probably already did. But the point is, an offensive line prevents all those other position groups from playing well.
Yeah, look, I agree. And you're going to see, I think, even more youth on the offensive line today. But to focus on Joe for a minute, you're absolutely right, Steve. It's more pressure on him than you want to have on your quarterback, especially a new quarterback, right? But it magnifies the importance of when players are there, he's got to hit them. I mean, you got to hit open guys. You can't have guys running wide open in the secondary like you had with Ronnie Bell against Indiana, like you had with Blake Corum last week. You got to hit those throws, because they're going to be few and far between, for the very reason that you just laid out. You can't run the football consistently, right? I mean, that's just should we expect that? We shouldn't. I mean, you want them to get some semblance of a running game, but it'd be ridiculous to expect for them to go from what they are right now to all of a sudden they're going to be potent on the ground. You just want respectable on the ground. They can get respectable on the ground. Now you take some of the pressure off the passing game, which is going to have to carry you. Your aerial assault is too strong. Your ability through the air is what's going to win games for you if you win games as Michigan this year. It's just the way it is. So can you get respectable on the ground and keep defenses honest? They'll have a shot if they can do that.
As we continue this conversation about Michigan at the midway point, and we started this conversation, what we were hearing about Joe and the quarterback position in the fall leading up to the season versus now, and we've hit on a bunch of the positions on offense. But Steve hit on the offensive line, key for this team. We knew they were replacing a lot of parts, and we knew that was going to be an issue. But at the same time, and maybe this is going back to conversations we've had a lot in the last few weeks, when you're going against what you go against in practice, so you get a certain sense of what you think you might have versus maybe the sense of what you actually have. What were we hearing about that offensive line, as a refresher from a few months ago versus where things stand, or from a month and a half ago versus where things stand now as we're halfway through the season? And we do know, obviously, that injuries are playing a major factor along the offensive line as well.
You're hearing that they can run the football. You're hearing that they can run the football pretty effectively. And that was one of the things that would keep that pass rush at bay, because that was one of the things that we heard about the defense was they were able to, with Quiddy and with Aiden especially, they were able to pin their ears back and get some pressure on the quarterback. Now, we've seen other teams be able to get pressure on the quarterback too, right? So, maybe saying that about Quiddy and Aiden had something to do with who they were doing it against in practice somewhat. But getting back to the offensive line, yeah, man, it is part of it is absolutely injury. You're without Jalen Mayfield. Without, I don't expect to see Ryan Hayes out there today. You've had a Vastardis who was really good in week one, but I just seems to me as I've been watching him perform the last couple of weeks, it just seems like he's just been a little off compared to where he was at the beginning of the season. So, I'm expecting to see Zach Carpenter there. And he's strong, but he hasn't played. So here you're going to have the most inexperienced group of the season going into this game against Rutgers, where the strength of their defense is probably their interior defensive line. It's a tough matchup for them. But again, if you're Michigan, what you would like to be able to do, Steve, is understanding that weakness, maybe get to some quick game, maybe be able to throw the football to the perimeter and use the short passing game and the perimeter passing game or jet sweeps or those kinds of things as augments, as add-ons to your run game. Problem with that is you've seen your receiver and tight end blocking be woefully lacking the last few weeks. So, as much as we talk about the line and how that has been a letdown, you expect it to be able to lean on other aspects of your offense, namely your tight ends especially. Remember, Jim Harbaugh said against Minnesota, Steve, he told the broadcast team that Eric All is going to be the best tight end of all time at the University of Michigan, right? I mean, he said that to Kirk Herbstreit. So the perimeter piece of this, especially from a blocking perspective, hasn't been up to snuff for Michigan in the last few games either.
Well, Eric All's got a lot of time to become the player that Jim Harbaugh thinks he's going to be.
Right.
You have that going for you. If I'm the offensive line coach, Ed Wardner, I'm taking some time to go to Army's game film. It's an all-running team where the receivers do have to pass, have to block downfield. I've shown some footage about how you run block as a receiver, how tenacious you are, how you don't give up, how you are fierce from the snap of the ball. Show them whatever game tape you can to get them in the right mindset and work on those things. And then the other thing you got to work on is have a jugs machine throwing 90-mile-an-hour, footballs at you, at your knees and at your shoulders, and you don't get to come off the practice field until you catch 5 in a row. Something like that, because I've seen Michigan having problems with the drops for a few years now with their receivers, regardless of who they are and who's gone by and the new people coming in. So these are definitely a couple of issues that I would be looking at. The other thing is, you want to simplify the offense. You simplify the offense, defense does a little bit of scouting on you. You're running the same 5 or 6 things, and then they can go through it. I want to take you to that, if we got time, Ira, one play that you've been showing on Facebook and YouTube, Sam, about the goal line situation on fourth down where the tight end makes a mistake. and I watched your description of that, of what he was supposed to do, and I could see it. He was trying to get that inside shoulder and go in, but it's like the Wisconsin player at the snap of the ball knew that the tight end was going to try to take his inside shoulder. So at the snap of the ball, he went whoop to the other side. The tight end for Michigan basically looks like he whiffed, and he can't believe that the guy wasn't there anymore. And that allowed him to go around to the outside and help disrupt things. Scouting's important too. And when you simplify things, the other team can look at the 5 or 6 things that you do well, and they say, well, when they go into this situation, this is what I'm going to do to make them look foolish. And I saw that a couple of times with Wisconsin.
Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the Drive of the Game, brought to you by Brighton Ford. You'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket. Coming up next, hour number 3 kicks off talking football with our guy Joe Simon, and this week in Michigan football history with our guy Greg Dooley. So stay with us. This is the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
All right, so that one's for you. You're a recruiting guy.
6'4", 240, hits like a rock. You feel it when you're
God.
up on the boards.
Mitts as silky as.
This is what Steve is talking about. This was that G League play where the tight end, it was definitely on. The tight end blew up the play. And this
right. So here's the angle. This to me, Sam, shows it looked like, yeah, he wanted to do exactly the way it's supposed to be described, but that defensive end just slips to the other side like he knew it was coming.
See, but he has to aim at that outside shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
So
hey, can I jump in on this?
Yeah.
Hi guys, how are you?
Silver Fox, Joe Simon.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I know until they changed the rule that I'm about to mention, a lot of people disagree with me about snapping a ball when you need half a yard, snapping a ball 5 yards in the backfield. But when they made the Bush push legal, you got to be under center and call Ben Mason pushing your quarterback across the goal line. I don't like the play at all. You're right. He missed the block, but dumb.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't miss the block. He mistargeted this play. And it's just one of those things.
Oh, show it, Sam. Show it from that angle.
Yeah, he totally mistargets this play. And you're like, where are you stepping? That's just not where you're supposed to go. And so by him doing that, you got a young player in Zach Zenner right here who is supposed to go around. He's supposed to go around Schoonmaker here, and he sees Schoonmaker doing something, and it completely confuses him. He probably should still go around the edge because Mason is going to come up and blow up this linebacker. That's his man. But because Schoonmaker steps wrong here, it completely confuses Zach Zenner, and now Zach Zenner stops. He blocks the wrong man, and the whole play is blown up, and it's because your tight end just, I mean, and I guess I'm to the point now where I said, like I said before, you see enough of that one man blowing up to play football for me to say you're doing too much. They find 5 or 6 things that you can do, drill those things, and it might be predictable to the opponent, but at least your execution is predictable.
I'm going to guess, Sam, that tight end, he took a step to the left. He was probably supposed to go straight and then drive him to the left. He took the step to the left too soon.
No, he's not supposed to. You saw take a step to the right, you mean, and then drive him left?
Yes.
Yeah.
He just went left. He's like, my goal is to get him to go left. So he went left at the very beginning instead of going at him and then pushing him left.
Yeah. Could be. It blew up the play.
It blew up the play, regardless.
You guys, my nephew Tony's in town, and he married a Rutgers girl. So there's going to be an interesting night for them. So shout out to Tony.
Honestly, I thought that was the beginning of a joke or something like that.
No. There's going to be a little war going on.
How many houses divided statues do they make of Michigan-Rutgers? There's probably
not too many.
Not many exist.
Devin doesn't get too many opportunities.
Somebody wrote, it was Thomas, that says Indiana didn't run. Yeah, they had -1 yard against Ohio State, but 492, I believe, was the number in the air. 491.
491 for Penix. So they had 490 total yards of offense.
491 passing on Ohio State. Dang.
Yeah.
But negative. I mean, what do you think? This was BYU back in the 80s or something?
Okay, we're in the open for hour 3 right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh, also to summarize as well, too, Dooley, I believe the goalie for Wisconsin is still looking for his jockstrap somewhere in Wisconsin after that beautiful
Oh, yeah.
overtime
Oh my God, that
winner.
goal last night.
That was great.
Grace got so excited. That goal was awesome last night.
Man.
So my Canadian cousin wrote in. You said it, Miz. So like you got this hockey vocabulary going on. I showed him the overtime goal that Michigan scored against Wisconsin last night, and he goes, "Silky mitts," as they would say. And I was like, never heard of that.
Oh, mitts so silky, you thought they were made of velvet, eh? Dangle, snipe, silly, go on, get on the plane back
Canadian,
home.
So watch it.
I'm an 8th Canadian.
All right, here we go, gentlemen. And I use that term loosely, of course. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are now about 2 hours until kickoff from Piscataway, New Jersey. So welcome back to the KeyBank Countdown to Kickoff. Every Friday on the Michigan Insider, we have our strategy preview segment with our guide, the Silver Fox, Joe Simon. If you're watching on Ticket TV, you can see him on the screen. Every Saturday, he helps us kick off our final hour of this show, talking about what he saw last week and what he's watching for this week. Joe, these conversations have evolved this season from, X's and O's and strategy to a lot different conversation. Unfortunately, that's what happens when it plays out this way. First of all, happy Saturday. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. Lisa Simon's birthday today, so I've been working around the house pretty good today. Thanks.
Well, happy birthday to Lisa. So let's jump into this conversation. We're talking football with our guy, Joe, and I don't know, Sam, maybe you just want to pick it up where we left off yesterday. It was you guys got into a pretty good conversation for about 40, 45 minutes, and then obviously time ran out, so we bring you back in today.
Where do we leave off?
I'll just start with, how are you feeling now on game day Saturday? Probably about as apprehensive as most of us.
It wasn't that long ago that we would have said that our second stringers could play Rutgers and win easily. Well, we're about to find that out, aren't we? Because we have a D line and an O line that we didn't think we were going to have playing in this game. And so let's really find out. And unfortunately for us, that is a reflection of the themes we've been talking about, essentially how far we are removed from the elite program that we want to be. Are our number twos going to be that way? Are we going to have a nail biter? Sam, last week you said something I just latched onto. I loved what you said. You said if we lose, how we lose will really address our team credibility. I think, to steal some of your thunder, Sam, this week, how we win as well as how we lose if we lose is going to be just so terribly important. I'm not talking about style points. I'm going to talk about the way we do what we do, particularly the way we start the game. Isn't it true that we've given about a touchdown in every single opening drive in every game this year?
They didn't give up one last week.
Pardon?
Last week,
was off the interception.
They stopped
Wisconsin with the ball.
Yeah, Wisconsin had the ball at first.
That's right. Then they went through the interception. So,
One of the
but
few
anyway,
times Michigan made them punt.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Did they? I forgot to block the
One
game
of the
out.
few times they did was the opening possession.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. After that, yeah.
So anyway, this is a kind of a reflection of where we are. For me, I'm looking for two position groups, and I'm not really going to say wide or quarterback. I'm going to say our wide receivers, number one. They have to be enormous this game. Not only their blocking, which we've been very critical of, and correctly so in the last couple games, but they're going to have to create space. They're going to have to get open. They're going to have to help our quarterbacks out, and I think we do have mismatches in our favor at that position group.
You hope that those guys have really over the last couple of weeks. I mean, we've seen wrong routes run. We've seen drops, not mostly from the tight end position, but I'm including them with the wideouts. If you can't have those guys be for Michigan what they were in week one, they don't win. Simple as that. They have got to be what they were in week one for Michigan to have a chance, because look, this is not, and you tell me what you think, Joe. I just think it's not realistic to expect this running game with the offensive line contingent that you're talking about here, expect them to go from what they have been over the past 3 weeks, to expect them to go from that to being potent, to be able to run it down people's throats. You need teams to respect the run. I think that's a reasonable expectation. And then if you can do that, that can open up some things in the pass game, which is where this team has the most potential to do damage. That's how I see it.
I totally agree with that. I think the only way that the running game can be potent is to strike at the right time with the right call. This entire offense is based upon creating the mismatch and creating the right opportunity. And I think that if we have the ability for a more balanced attack, we do have some explosion in the backfield that can occur. We already saw Charbonnet. His speed is better than last year, as we were told. If they have the timely call for the explosive, that's going to be critical. And that's, I think, the only way that happens, because you're right, Sam, we're not going to go grind it out. Rutgers, they like to be pretty balanced. They have the ability to match up in the interior. And also, like I was going to talk about my second position group concern, which is going to be our linebackers. They like a lot of gadget plays. They like a lot of things, but our linebackers have, to me, a lot of folks, including me, have focused on the defensive backfield being disappointed. I've been really disappointed in that position group. I thought that position group was going to be a lot better coming in.
And two things. I guess when I talk about the running game not being potent, I'm saying what I mean by that is being able to, run it, assuming they get, 70 plays, right? I mean, which is a far cry from what they got last week, that they would run it 40 of those times. I just don't think that this can be that kind of rushing attack. To your point, timely, opportunistic, being able to capitalize on the opportunities when they're there. Being able to use maybe run controls and add-ons, bubbles as an extension of your run game, and maybe hit some explosives that way. I think there's a potential to maybe be able to strike with some of those things against a team like Rutgers. Maybe they take some of those tight ends out of the game and go old school and play Joe Honingford more at tight end. Don't rule that out. But to your point, Joe, and I'm curious your opinion on this, Steve. Yeah, the linebacker position. We thought they were saying that they were going to be one of the best linebacking cores in the country. And for a game, they look like that. And then since then, they've struggled.
Yeah, I wasn't on board on that one. Seen it too many times where they were getting caught up and being in the wrong spots. And no, I wasn't seeing that. I was expecting the defensive line to rue the day for the Michigan defense, knowing that the secondary was going to be fairly new, especially at the corner positions. I didn't expect a lot of the linebackers, and I'm not saying that I'm right. I just wasn't gung ho with it.
We had Ross coming back. He's underperformed my expectation. McGrone, I thought he was going to just go to the next level. Like, he was great last year. I think he was going to hit the elite level. He's had a couple of great moments, but not really seen that. And also that level of play. And, the reason I'm focused on them, although your point about the defensive line is so right, Steve, but in the modern game, you talked about 97 in the previous segment, how the 97 defense could rely on their defensive line getting home. Well, home today is, 3 seconds or less. Home then, there were things called 7-step drops that were still in the game back in 97. They're not part of today's game. So getting home as a defensive line is something that's far different today than it was. It requires that linebacker and the Viper, which I forgot to mention, but it requires those positions to be just cut above. And I don't know. I hope they break out today. I hope we see something today from that position group, because that's the one that's disappointed me the most.
All right, Joe, the other conversation.
When have we heard Michael
go ahead,
Barrett's? When have we heard Michael Barrett's name mentioned since Minnesota?
Great.
That guy looked like a world beater after the first weekend. I just don't even remember his name being mentioned.
Case in point.
Is he dinged up a little bit, Sam? Still?
I just think that they have. I think that he has had some coverage issues more than anything since that game. That teams have have really tried to isolate him, much like they did Khalil Hudson, to see if he can run with tight ends, see if he can run with slots. And that has been, as we've seen some busts as they over-rotate on some shifts before the snap of the football. We've just seen some coverage breakdowns as they've tried to shift how they play. That's another thing. I mean, they've gone to trying to be more of a zone team than they were, and that has created more issues. I don't think that means they should get away from it, because I just think the personnel fits that style of play more than it does all the heavy man-to-man stuff. But I think you're seeing some deficiencies there when it comes to their zone drops too. So just a lot of fixing on the defense. And unfortunately, just to give you the real, I'm always going to do that. I don't think they can fix most of what ails this defense this year.
All right, Joe, before we let you go, closing argument.
Well,
game.
I'm afraid this is going to be a very close game. I hope I'm wrong about that, and I think that doesn't favor us. To carry over what you asked for at the beginning from our discussion yesterday, something's definitely wrong in the building, in the locker room, in my mind. Some people label it a culture issue. I've called it a trust issue. Something's not right. Can it be righted in a season, within a season? That's one of the hardest challenges for any coach to do. I definitely think, though, we're going to hear the name Dwumfor an awful lot tonight. And that will be part of the discussion Sam and I had yesterday about our attrition, our lack of ability to retain players, our lack of ability, our coaches shifting around. I'm not sure I know all the inside story there, but I do think that tonight, win or lose, how we do either one is going to be a very pivotal moment in what happens next.
All right, Joe, tell everybody before you go about the law offices of Joseph A. Simon.
All criminal defense needs, misdemeanor to felony, right, in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County primarily, all surrounding counties as well. You can find us at themichigandefenders.com, right across the street from Michigan Football Stadium. As we often say, nobody thinks they're going to need to know a criminal defense attorney, but when those things happen, we'd like to think we're your best option. We're always available.
Joe, appreciate your time as always. And this week we will see you on Wednesday instead of on Friday because it's Thanksgiving week. So have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you on Wednesday. Thank you very much as always, Joe.
Thanks. Have a great rest of the show, everybody. Go Blue.
All right, guys, it is now time for This Week in Michigan Football History. Here is our very good friend. Here is Greg Dooley.
This Week in Michigan Football History.
Good afternoon. Did you know that November 21st is a glorious day in Michigan football lore? As it was on this day in 1964 that Coach Bump Elliott and Captain Jim Conley stifled Woody Hayes 10-0 in Columbus to capture the Big Ten title and send the team to the Rose Bowl. And we won that too, crushing Oregon State 34-7 in Pasadena. It's also the anniversary of a game deeper in history, all the way back to 1903. It was the final home game in Fielding H. Yost's third season in Ann Arbor when Michigan faced the men from Oberlin College. Yost actually rested the big ones for this one, saving them for the huge upcoming Thanksgiving Day game against rivals Amos Alonzo Stagg and his Chicago Maroons. As expected, the victors valiant crushed Oberlin 42-0 in a game mercifully shortened. Stagg himself was in Ann Arbor on this day 118 years ago to scout Michigan ahead of the big showdown in the Windy City. The short week that followed brought up blizzard to the Midwest, but the snow led up the morning of the game. Marshall Field was cleared of 7 inches of snow before the battle, and as it turned out, that seemingly was the final obstacle in Yost's way as he unleashed a world of hurt on the Maroons. Michigan scored on nearly every drive of the first half, gained over 300 yards, and the defense gave up just a single first down. Though Stagg's 1903 team featured 3 future Hall of Famers, the Wolverines continued the domination in the second half and sealed the 28-0 shutout. Unfortunately for Stagg, the beating only lingered as the newspapers piled on after the game. The Free Press called it the most severe drubbing ever administered to the Maroons. Another writer observed, Chicago was not beaten, it was run over, buffeted about, almost made sport of. Yost himself called the effort the best he'd ever seen by a Michigan team, and his men captured their third straight national championship. So go blue. Beat Rutgers, please. And for more, check out mvictors.com and WTKA.com for the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff. This is Greg Dooley.
Thank you, Greg. As always, great stuff. Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show for the Gem of the Game, brought to you by Lewis Jewelers on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. Coming up next, more on our Michigan Wolverines. Stay with us. This is the Key Bank Countdown and Kickoff live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear.
Oh, and there's Mrs. Face. Hi, Ms.
Oh, hi, guys. Oh, and the answer.
Please, yeah, Dooley.
Yeah.
Please.
Please.
When I first heard that, it was funny.
That was good.
I think
Oberlin was a
Oberlin-
power, Darnell, man. Back in the day, I mean, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, but they were a power back in the day.
He captured the emotion.
Front
first.
row. Next up
That's
is
me.
Lo-
I was just muting my feed. Sorry about that.
What's up, Tim? How's Three Rivers? You're doing all right?
Oh, to answer C's question, that had to do with
31-7
the-
now. And again, still all quiet from the Clarke household.
Yeah.
What channel is that one on?
That's a BTN game. 31-7.
And C, to answer
Northwestern's up
that,
14-7 with the ball, third quarter, 9:45 to go in third quarter.
to answer that for you, C, that was my hockey lingo that I mentioned, and it must have made perfectly clear sense to
Our Canadian
Mr. Ryan on our
Yes.
YouTube
Oh,
feed.
yeah.
Yes, our Canadian listeners totally understood.
So how's she going, first off?
So
Watch out for them hosers up there, eh?
Oh, I better watch out. And don't feed the meese. Don't feed the moose up there as well. Apparently, it's illegal to feed moose, and they're licking cars up in Alberta. I wish I was lying. Apparently they're fining people
I'm not
$25K.
thinking you're lying. I'm laughing because it's funny.
It is funny. I will say
Gotta
that.
find anything we can find funny, and honestly, you could tell me almost anything that's happening now in 2020, and I'd probably believe it because I think we've seen just about everything. So here you go, Sam. You got like 30 seconds or so, right? What are your thoughts on?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Can you even
Keep
track
up.
of all the moves?
You know what?
I need Rod to send me a wrap up.
You know which one caught my attention the most? Josh Jackson. Can Josh Jackson live up to the promise that we all thought he had
Coming home. I didn't even see that one.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. I missed it.
Yeah. Apparently, Rajon Rondo signed a 2-year, $15 million with the Hawks.
Yes, Mike. I know. I'm very shy.
Let's be- I'm muting. Give me a second. There we go.
Yeah, I know. It's very shiny.
oh jeez.
It's true. Sam and I were just talking about Mike Jarvis, the old basketball coach at GW.
You have to put the black mark over the black tape.
Just put it in a koozie. That's what I do.
I got the other half for you.
So I'm going to have to automate
If you guys meet together, if Sam goes one way,
Hey.
you guys can bring the drinks together. I don't think it works that
Hey
way.
Sam, here we go.
Yeah.
Ready? 3, 2.
Right?
Now, if you could
No,
have
I
the
didn't
drink,
mean.
it'd be great, Steve. If you passed it and someone handed you back a Coke and someone handed Sam, that would be hilarious. Anthony, here's a question for Ant for Sam.
Will we see 100 yards rushing? Or
That's a 100-yard rusher. He's not specifying which team.
I can see. I can see that.
All right. Coming back in 10, I hope.
Just not for Michigan, Ant.
You were saving that right for the end. You were saving that right to drop that in at the end.
All right, guys, back on radio in.
We can do that. No, put it out screen.
This
Put it out screen. No,
The
Other way.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
Oh boy, back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Win the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgated home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light. It's easy. Just go to WTK.com/countdown and click for your chance to win. It's the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgated home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light and Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. And here you're listening to the Key Bank Countdown to Kickoff. You're watching us as well. If you're watching us on Ticket TV, you're highly entertained during the breaks, especially courtesy of our friends Sam Webb and Steve Clarke. That being said, we are back to the show talking about the current state of the Michigan Wolverines. And so the humor, I think, has just deflated out of the building. And we were talking earlier about what we thought, going into the season versus what we know now. We talked about the running back, the quarterback. We talked about the offensive line. Before we get to defense, and I want to ask a more of a generic question about the defense and going position by position. But Sam, I do want you to address the skill position guys, running backs, receivers, what we were hearing, what we thought we were going to see versus what we've seen, because the two have not matched.
Well, I think starting with the running backs, I just think they're trying to feed a lot of mouths. It's hard to play 4 running backs. Now, they did so effectively in week 1, but remember, there were some huge plays that maybe inflated our perception of usage. You had some big plays from a few different guys. Are you going to get that routinely from game to game? If you don't, can you really feature 4 guys? Now, look, they had 43 plays last week. No one's going to be happy with how many carries they get when you only have 43 plays for a game. But I think moving forward, I think it's going to be tough to establish any sort of consistency if they keep trying to play 4 guys. It's just my opinion. I may be proven wrong. Time will tell. But I think that they have to feature maybe 3 guys and maybe ride a hot hand or 2 if they find them in a game, and maybe slip that 3rd guy in there where you can. But I think trying to play 4 is maybe 1 too many. Receiver wise, I think there is a lot of excitement over what the new guys can bring in the way of speed and explosiveness. But their most consistent guy is Ronnie Bell. And I think trying to come up with ways to make sure he touches the ball early in games might be something that they have to do. The way they run their offense is the defense determines where the ball goes. They don't call a play and Ronnie's the number 1 target. That's not how their offense works. Their offense works, hey, we're going to snap the ball, we're going to read, and what the defense does is going to determine where we go with the football. And that could wind up, because of where Ronnie is in the offense, he might not see the ball for the first half. And I just don't know that they can afford to do that. That's why I say they have to identify maybe a few plays they can run well, or maybe a few players that they want to try to make it a point to feed and run a play for that guy. Or maybe you got 5 or 6 plays that you run well, run those plays a lot to the point where you might be predictable to the opponent, but at least you are featuring your best guys. At least you are running the plays that your guys can execute consistently, and hopefully that improvement in execution will lead to some more success on the football field. That's the only thing I could come up with, Steve, my novice non-coaching opinion.
I hear you, because I don't have a lot of answers myself. If I'm in the coach's room, and Sam, I don't mean any disrespect, but if we're going to force the ball to Ronnie Bell, are you actually telling Joe Milton to force the ball into tight windows at this point? Because that's where he's getting into trouble over the last couple of weeks. So again, I don't have a counter to what Michigan should be doing at this point. I like your talk about, reducing the number of running backs. I think that a running back learns by each carry he gets. It's not always about being fresh for the 4th quarter. It's about a running back that understands, well, in this situation on this play, I needed to do this. And then you don't get that opportunity again until next week to actually rush the football under the same offensive line blocking and the same play calling. And that's kind of hard to learn. At the same time, I'm not sure the coaches feel who they think is the number 1 running back in this group. And maybe some of them are thinking that they want fresh guys in the 4th quarter to be able to do something. That's up to their coaches and up to the guys who see them every day in practice to try to figure it out. But like you, I'm kind of thinking that we need a couple of guys, or perhaps younger guys, who are going to. They're all young, with the exception of Chris. To start getting some experience so they can learn from it within the game and not have to learn from it for next week.
All right, we're going to flip to the other side of the ball. Michigan at the midway point here as we continue on the Key Bank Countdown and Kickoff on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket and on Ticket TV. I'm not going to go position by position with you, Sam, to have you, what were you hearing versus that. But I'm going to bring up this question we got earlier in the show from Ryan Watson, and those that are watching can see it on the screen as well. It says, hi, Sam. On the defensive side of the ball, which of these units could you see improving the most this season? D-line, linebacker, defensive back. So I guess to expand on that question, Sam, start with the defense as a whole, what we kind of were expecting, where things stand now, and what can possibly be done in season between now and the remainder of the season.
Wow.
It's a loaded question, I know.
I'm gonna be frank with you. I just don't think that there's much they can do defensively this year to get this defense to the point where it's anywhere close to what we thought it was going to be heading into the season. Now they can be more competent defensively than we thought, than they have been recently, as they get more proficient in playing zone, as they get some of these younger defensive linemen more experience, that they can make fewer mistakes that are born of being just simply out of position. But man, when you consider that Quiddy and Aiden's out for the season and Quiddy's out for who knows how long, so you probably, as far as pass rush is concerned, aren't going to be able to count on much. You hope. I mean, you run some games up front. You maybe bring some blitzes, but I just think that they are going to have a tough time in the trenches on the defensive line. Secondary wise, I think that they are going to get some help from the recruiting class. I think they're going to get some help from the portal. I think that the guys that they have out front right now, as far as fit in scheme, aren't as ideal a fit as say some of the guys they had in the past. I don't mean that they can't play. That just means how they've played in the past. I just don't think that the guys that they have in the front of the line are as adept at playing that style of football. So I'm pointing to the linebackers to answer your question. Cam McGrone, I know Josh Ross is capable of playing better football because we've seen it. We've seen flashes from Mike Barrett, and I think Khalil Mullings is one of the better athletes in the front seven. So start working him into the equation. I think that's the place, whether it's blitzing, whether it's getting better zone drops and coverage. That's the position that I think has the most potential for improvement in season.
So for me, I'm going to give you an argument on all three position groups and therefore not answer the question. The secondary is the most raw. Okay, so they have the chance to be taught and to learn, and they know that the pressure is on them. They might make the most improvement. The linebackers have the most experience. So these guys have been they've been through the wars. They've been through this before. They're probably the most likely group to be able to understand, process, and take it to the next step. And then I think it's the defensive front that has the most talent in general. They have the most talent of that group, and therefore some of that cream is going to rise to the top, Sam, and somebody or a couple of them are going to be able to make some headway. So that's my way of making an argument for all three, but never giving you a real answer because I'm not sure which way it's going to go.
I like Steve there sitting on the fence. Appreciate that. Listen after the game for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show, brought to you by Retirement Income Solutions and presented by Alt Equipment Company. And you'll hear it here on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. Coming up next, we're talking injuries. That's obviously a big conversation. We've sprinkled that in throughout, but we're going to give you a full list of that coming up next, plus key matchups in tonight's game. And what else you need to watch for as Michigan and Rutgers get ready to kick off a little bit after 7:30 from Piscataway in New Jersey. Stay with us. This is the Key Bank Countdown and Kickoff, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear.
Steve, can you hand him that bottle now?
Yeah. Which one?
Bottle here.
Pick one. There you go. There you go, Sam.
If I had a Jack Daniels bottle, I would grab it. I try to reach it, Steve.
No, you can't have it, Sam. You can't have it.
Hey, easy. That bottle has a family.
I hear you, Nick. I hear you, man.
Oh man.
To answer your question, 0 on all 3 of those guys. Well, 0 on Pay and on Quiddy and on Jalen. I'll go odds of coming back for Aiden 40%. I think he's more likely to be gone, in my opinion. I don't think there's any chance for Jalen Mayfield or Quiddy Pay, though. I think those guys are gone.
Yeah. Quiddy's a first-round pick, potentially.
Hi, Gracie.
Taylor was already half gone anyway.
Hope you're having fun. Hi, Gracie. Behave with your Grammy and Poppy. Hi.
Gracie.
Is she texting you or is she in the comment section somewhere?
My dad texted me.
Gotcha.
Sean, we got to do what we can, man.
Hey, man, we're trying to help. Look, you got to laugh to not cry sometimes, man.
And I've said this many times. Yeah, I've said it many times. You control the controllables. We have no control over the game. So we have control over everything else, like pregame having fun, right? You have control over that. You have control over that kind of thing. So we do that.
Michigan loses to Rutgers. I might have to wear a hazmat outfit to the next.
Just let me tell you, I'll be glad.
I might drink live on the radio during the post-game show tonight if they lose to Rutgers. That might be
just waiting
live.
for your permission, Ira. Just waiting for your permission.
If they lose to Rutgers, I would legit think they quit.
I might have to make a drive to Saline beforehand.
I will legit think I will legit think that there are certain guys that have quit on the season if they lose to Rutgers. I will think that. I don't know what other conclusion to draw at that point if they lose to this team. So we shall see.
I stand by for 628's predictions.
So tough one. What do we have going on with these games? Let's see.
Still 14-7
Northwestern over Wisconsin. 4:10 to go in the third. Northwestern has the ball at their own 13, so they're just getting the ball back. Iowa's now at 31-13 as Penn State just scored a touchdown. Clifford to Strange for 28 yards. We are awaiting the extra point.
Well, Sean Clifford is back quarterbacking then. Look at that. Hey, Ira. Sean Clifford's first pass of the day was that 28-yard touchdown pass. So, I mean, Penn State just needs to throw in the backup quarterback, no matter who it is, just halfway through the game.
Right. I hear you, Walt. I hear you. Andre T, you should get a Flint. If we get a Flint style Coney performance, then Michigan is coming back with a comfortable margin. Coming back with a win by a comfortable margin.
We're coming back to radio here in 10 seconds.
I'll settle for a Detroit style Coney performance. That tells you. Just give me anything.
Based on how you describe Detroit style Coney, Sam, I'm pretty sure that's what we've seen the last 3 weeks. Based on what you say.
I say, man, it's still it's just the ugly win is what that is synonymous with.
That is the nicest thing you've ever said about a Detroit Coney.
I'll take it. Back on radio in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to the KeyBank Countdown and Kickoff. We are brought to you by KeyBank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. I hope you're all enjoying listening to us on Sports Talk 1050, WTKA The Ticket, and especially enjoying watching us on Ticket TV. We are trying to have as much fun as we can on the air, and we continue that, and it usually goes a little bit sillier during the breaks as well. So if you're watching on Ticket TV, hope you're enjoying the silliness on display, especially from our guys, Sam Webb and Steve Clarke. Before we get into key matchups in tonight's game and an updated injury report, scoreboard update with 4:10 to go in the third quarter. Northwestern is up 14-7 over Wisconsin. They're about to start their drive from their own 13-yard line. And 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. Penn State just scored, but Iowa leads 31-13. Penn State did not convert their 2-point conversion when they scored, so it is 31-13. Iowa now has the ball back, and they're already in Penn State territory trying to put more points on the board. All right, guys, so before we get to key matchups, injury updates. So, Sam, offensive line is injury-riddled. Kwity Paye, along with, we know Aiden's out, but Kwity sounds like as well. Not sure if I'm missing anybody else to take us through who is unfortunately not going to be there for us in the game tonight.
There's a bevy of injuries, but I'll only go over the guys that I don't expect to see. So I do not expect to see Jalen May. Hi, Simone. I should jump into see, Simone distracted me. Haven't seen Simone in a long time. How you doing, Simone? I do not expect to see Jalen Mayfield or Ryan Hayes today. Think about what the mindset for Jalen Mayfield has to be, Steve. I mean, a guy who's come back, he was already training for the pros, and then he comes back to obviously play with his brothers and try to help them win. But you got to think seriously about how an injury could affect you the rest of the season and how it could affect your stock, right? You got to keep those things in mind. So I don't expect to see him. I don't expect to see Ryan Hayes, nor do I expect to see Andrew Vistardis based on what we've seen the last few weeks from him. I think we're going to see Zach Carpenter there. Here's the glass half full perspective on all of that. We have seen the guys that have played in place of Jalen and Ryan the last couple of weeks. We have seen them get a little experience, so maybe that will aid them today in their play. And look, Zach Carpenter is a guy who bench pressed 225 pounds 39 times. That would have put him at top of the NFL combine, in 2 of the last 3 years or so. So very strong guy. Now, what does that mean on the field? I don't know. I mean, hopefully it means he can move some people. And that's what I hope it means. Time will tell, but it's going to be a replacement crew on the offensive line, Steve.
Or just keep Dwumfor in place. Because it's hard to move Michael Dwumfor, but at least keep him from advancing.
So, guys, this is now the key matchups portion of the show.
Oh, wait. And then on defense.
Sorry. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, on defense, I don't expect to see Kwity Paye. For the same reason I don't expect to see Jalen Mayfield.
Well, right. Here's the thing. You're talking about your own NFL stock. Jalen Mayfield's going to be drafted in the NFL. Kwity Paye is going to be drafted very high in the NFL. And if they have an injury and you're play like at a 70% level and it affects what you look like on tape, you can tell the coaching staffs that are looking at you say, well, I was only 70% of that game. And they go, yeah, right. Okay. Check that box. You're just not going to do it because what are you doing it for at this point?
Yeah, on a 1-3 team.
All right, so now we get to our key matchups portion of the show. Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Have we ever actually done a key matchups portion of the show for a Michigan-Rutgers matchup in the past?
That would be a negatory, Ira. It just wasn't necessary. We usually took that out of the slot and we decided to make fun of people in the crowd or just make fun of Rutgers in general. And, Sam is always good for material right off the cuff. And, I research my ripping material. Sam can just do it, on the fly. So, yeah.
Sam, can I interpret the look that you just gave on your face? Did you just make that reaction because of the Clifford to Dotson 68-yard touchdown?
I did.
It is now 31-19 with the point after try pending. That's why you should not have gone for 2 yet. But that James Franklin and score management is, not his strong suit. So there's your score update from Happy Valley, 31-19. They got the 2-point conversion, so they made up for the missed extra point, and it's now 31-21 with 7 seconds to go in the third quarter. On the flip side, Wisconsin just got the ball, and they are now on the move. They have it at the Northwestern 31. Wisconsin trails Northwestern 14-7 with 1:47 to go in the third quarter. So now let's do those key matchups. We'll start with you, Steve Clarke. Michigan's offense versus Rutgers defense, key matchup in this one.
The offensive line versus the defensive line, that is the absolute layup in this equation. Again, Julius Turner and Michael Dwumfor, the two tackles that are penetrating all offensive lines that they've been able to play, with the exception of Ohio State. They've been able to get in the backfield, and they don't necessarily have to get the tackles for losses. They are getting those, but they don't necessarily have to do that to disrupt the play. And so you have Michigan's interior offensive line going up against these two guys. And one of them, as Sam has said, is playing with a lot on his mind about getting as many as he can get. He's like the guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where he found his car totally totaled and it was labeled by the other team. This is the way Michael Dwumfor is going to come out of the field in Piscataway tonight. So we'll see how he does, but he's got a great complementary player right next to him in Julius Turner. And then you got another, pretty fast, empowering guy too. I lost his name. Turgeroff is one of the defensive end spots. That to me is the clear matchup. I don't see much of a big deal, Sam, between the secondary of Rutgers versus Michigan wide receiving core, and the linebackers will be somewhat interesting. Maybe I can give you a piece of bone off the layup that I was able to take from
I'll just co-sign 100% what you just said about Michigan's O-line against their D-line, and specifically, look, Michael Dwumfor, it's personal for him. I mean, like I said before, I think he felt more wanted at Rutgers than he did here in Ann Arbor, and seeing how they're doing right now, I think they would love to have Michael Dwumfor right about now with the injuries that they've had up front. But he's been saying all week to former teammates about how, he's going to put up some numbers today. So we'll see if he's able to do it. Time will tell, but what you got to hope, like I said earlier in the show, all that talk about practice, and you guys have been saying, y'all this practice hype, it hasn't translated to the football field. You better hope that the practice hype about Michael Dwumfor does not translate to the football field, because he's one of the guys they used to rave about having success against the guys that he's going to face today.
All right, let's flip to the other side of the ball. Sam, you lead us off on this one. Key matchup in the game, Michigan's defense versus the Rutgers offense.
Ooh. I'm going to say, I guess I'll go whoever is on Bo Melton. You can, I think, be somewhat encouraged by the early bounce back we saw from Vincent Gray last week. I mean, going back, I didn't realize it at the time, but, first half of that game, Vincent Gray, I think, played his best football. That's noteworthy because of how mightily he struggled leading into that game. So hopefully that carries over into this contest, and they hold up better than we've seen them hold up in other games. Gonna be key. Just limit the damage is my expectation and my hope for the defense. Limit the damage. Just keep everything in front of you. Rally to the football. They're going to hit some plays, but make them be methodical. Make them go on long drives. If they go on those long drives, tip your cap. But when you have an opportunity to get off the football field, one hits you in the hands, catch it. You got a chance for a tackle for loss, get it. If they do those things, Steve, get off the field a couple of times, maybe they can limit Rutgers to the point where the offense can carry them to a victory.
Sam hasn't been paying attention to my Rutgers preview, because the guy to look out for is not Bo Melton, but Isaiah Pacheco, the running back who is the only guy who has scored for Rutgers over Michigan in the last 2 years. That touchdown being an 80-yard run right up
took it to the house.
Gut.
Yep.
Okay. But he's also fast enough to take the stretch play and turn the corner. Had 143 yards against Michigan in 2018 and had 213 all-purpose yards against Michigan in 2019. I mean, this is a guy they're going to give him the rock, and against a Michigan rush defense that has been in times not at the right place at the right time. And Pacheco is fast enough to make somebody pay, whether it's up the middle or around the corner. That, to me, is the key guy that Michigan has got to look on and be able to stop.
Coming up next, One Sure Thing, game picks, and more on the Wolverines and the Scarlet Knights. Stay with us. This is the KeyBank Countdown and Kickoff, live from Saline, Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV.
Clear on radio.
Sam, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Miz.
I'm
Brad
sorry.
He outran.
I should not have disparaged you in the way that I did. That was uncalled for.
I didn't take that.
That was uncalled for on my part.
I didn't take that as a disparagement, Steve.
He's so nice to me all the time. Sam is so nice to me all the time, and then I went and said he doesn't listen. I really should be slapped on the side of the head for that one.
Sam, your wife is funny.
What did she say?
Let me tell y'all something. 3-hour pregame shows in the Webb studio when the 1-year-old just woke up from a 2-hour nap is not as fun as you would think. I did hear Noah at one point in time. I did hear him in there.
You know what she's mad
He can
about?
join the show if he can. You can hold him up and he can help co-host.
What you talking about? Walt? We said they've been bad. We said all show they've been bad. I don't get it.
He's saying we're politely saying that they're bad without being. I don't know. You've been pretty blunt though.
Been very blunt. Who are the Michigan media people? I mean, of the actual media people.
Yeah, that's it. That is that would be for a break, but not a break that's on a video stream.
I mean, I don't have
no comment.
The actual media people. There are some people that aren't actual media people.
Well, that's true, but that's not the. Actually, that list is a lot shorter than it used to be. Greg, just so you know, I'm not saying there aren't any, but that list is shorter than it used to be. It's great when people leave the beat or.
I have a comeback line, but man, that would just be wrong. I wish I could say.
I mean, I'm a little. There are certain websites that are run by guys that are a little, that I always question. That M Victor site, little shady. And then I'll put this on the screen, making it seem like he was laughing at that comment, and that is how you take things out of context.
Here's what you got to say about James Franklin, man. Say what you want about his coaching acumen, but his guys don't quit on him.
They play.
Give them that. They keep playing.
So this is a very popular question. Very popular.
Yeah, I know. Look, man, if you're asking me, would I use them? Yes. Do I know if they're going to use them? No, I do not know. I would give him some run at the nickel and have Dax play some corner. I would do that. I don't know if that's in the cards. I think the most likely reserve corner to see more an increase in time is DJ Turner, in my opinion. I would roll the dice with Selden because I don't think even if he gets beaten up on out there, I don't think it'll wreck him mentally. I mean, that's what you would worry about with some of the young guys. I mean, I'm sure many of you like me would say, what do you have to lose if you can have a young guy go in there and get beat, right? The older guys are getting beat. Agree wholeheartedly. But could you wreck some of those young guys? I don't think you could wreck Andre Selden. I just think he's a dog like that.
I know.
You can't come in here right now.
It's okay. He can. There's only one segment left. He can give you your one sure thing.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on.
Is he walking yet?
You gonna give me some kisses? You can't hit that. Come right here.
I think the viewers would love to see young Noah Webb.
Come on.
I think he'd be a hit.
All right. Here's the no-no.
There, Noah. Hey, does he know he's on TV?
He does not.
Noah's on TV.
We bring him on the radio as well, too. Here we go.
All right, standing by.
Back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to the KeyBank Countdown and Kickoff on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA The Ticket and on Ticket TV. We have been brought to you by KeyBank, powered by Bud Light, driven by Brighton Ford, and supported locally by Wolverine Rental. I'm joined by my co-hosts Sam Webb and Steve Clarke, and our special co-host Noah Webb as well, making his video debut here on Ticket TV. That being said, now that Sam, you are holding cuteness in abundance in your hands, you now have some pressure put on you because it's now time for One Sure Thing, brought to you by Home Shore Lending. If you're looking for a mortgage and you're a Michigan fan, there's only one place to go, Homeshore Lending, both fair and honest. Homeshore Lending is local, efficient, and small enough so you'll work directly with the owner, Matt Demarest. For more information, go to homeshorelending.com. So, Sam, besides knowing that you're holding the cutest little kid in Southeast Michigan and beyond, and you got smashed in the face by a phone, what is your one sure thing?
My one sure thing in this game. Unfortunately, I'm gonna go with Rutgers outrushing Michigan in this game. I mean, Steve laid out what they're gonna ride. I think we know that the defensive line for Michigan is going to be shorthanded. We've seen them have problems with their rush defense last week. I'm gonna go with Rutgers outrushing Michigan in this game. That's my one sure thing.
Sorry, Steve. You know, when your team is winning and your team is playing well, some of these things are a lot more fun to do, aren't they, Sam?
Yes. Yeah.
Steve, are you going to co-sign his one short thing in this one?
I will agree with that and more, because quite frankly, I think it's been illustrated in the last 3 hours. We're really reaching to say positive things about Michigan football right now. You know, we've talked about the other teams like Penn State and Minnesota and Michigan State and some others, and try to rank them about where their future trajectory is. And I mean, at least at Minnesota, you know that you can give the ball to Muhammad Ibrahim. At Penn State, it seems like you could be the backup quarterback and be a world beater. Sean Clifford's 2 of 2 for 2 long touchdown passes as the backup, even though he used to be the starter. Penn State's showing some second half fight. I don't know where to go, Sam. What can you hang your hat on if you're Michigan offensively or defensively that you could talk about in a positive way? It's a rhetorical because the answer is I can't find anything. I look at Rutgers right now. I look at a team that's playing inspired football that doesn't have a lot to lose. You have an inspired defensive lineman that wants to take it to Michigan. Rutgers is going to give Michigan a good shot they're going to give them a good shot in this first quarter. Definitely, they've outscored their opponents 34-17. They also outscored their opponents 34-27. So I expect in this game that Rutgers is going to start out strong. And then you have to wait for Michigan to react to bad news. And when Michigan gets bad news, they don't react very well to it. They let things snowball. I'm not expecting good things today.
All right, guys. So I have a few questions for you before we get to our final pick segment, for our final picks part of the segment, I should say, and of the show. Who will have more? Well, I know one of the answers, you both think that Rutgers will have more rushing yards, so I'm going to skip right over that one. But Steve Clarke, I'll start with you on this one. Who will have more passing yards, Michigan or Rutgers?
Michigan.
I go with Michigan as well.
All right, another question. This one comes from Tommy Stanaway. Can Noah play defensive back?
He just had to give it a try. He's out here running now, so he's liking the opportunity to show his speed. So pat him up.
All right, Sam. Who will have more, Michigan or Rutgers? Who will have more turnovers? So who will commit? So on the negative side, who will commit more turnovers, not who will bring in more turnovers. So clarify that.
Get more turnovers.
Who will commit more turnovers?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna go homer on this and say Rutgers.
I don't have to be a homer on this one. I think Vedral has been prone to throw some interceptions and make some mistakes. Again, facepalm moments. Same time, he's going to make plays too against Michigan's defense. But I'm going to say that at least Rutgers is going to have 2 turnovers in this game.
All right, and Steve, who's going to have more explosive plays? So we're talking about rushing plays over 15 and pass plays over 20. Who's going to have more explosive plays in the game tonight, Michigan or Rutgers?
That's a great question, Ira, but I'm going to go with Isaiah Pacheco and Rutgers with the occasional sprinkling of a Bo Melton 30-yard pass play.
Sam, who's going to have more explosive tonight? Who's going to have more explosive plays, Rutgers or Michigan?
Wow, man. I'm going to go with Michigan. And I'll tell you why when we make our picks.
All right, we got a message in here from David Mendenhall. It's never good when we are on the fence about comparing Michigan and Rutgers, and that's part of the reason why I brought this exercise to the table. Unfortunately, Final question before we get to your pick. M. Victor's Greg Dooley wants to know who will drink more Jack Daniels, Steve Clarke or Sam Webb?
Steve Clarke, because I don't have any Jack Daniels in the house.
We can prove it then in 10 seconds.
All right, guys, let's get to your game picks. We'll start with you, Sam Webb.
Yeah, I think that this game is going to be close. First of all, I think that you have two teams that, when you look at their records, they are exactly what their records say they are. Now, I feel like with Michigan offensively, the things that I've been talking about them doing, I think we're going to see some of that. I think we're going to see them take the tight ends off the field a little more, maybe a little 10 personnel. When they do play tight end, I think we're going to see some Joel Honingford there. So you at least know you're going to get some edge blocking, right? A former offensive lineman there. And I think we're going to see them try to establish some staple plays. So get to some pin and pulls, get to some power, get to some counter. I think they're going to try to identify a handful of plays that they can run effectively and run them over and over again and open up some things in the passing game. If Joe Milton struggles, I think the hook is going to be very, very quick. And I think what that says to me is they are going to look to exploit some play action, get down the football field. And whether it's Joe Milton or Cade McNamara, I think one of those guys is finally going to have an opportunity to make some plays down the football field and make them. Enough for Michigan to win this game. A tight one, 31-27.
All right, before we get Steve's pick, Jeff Fletcher wants to know, Sam, who will have more TD passes, Joe Milton or Cade McNamara?
I'm going to go with Joe. I think he's going to – I think his attitude this week – set aside the actual practice performance and his attitude upon hearing that it was going to be an open competition. I like that. It says a lot to me about where he is mentally. I think he's going to bounce back enough today to have a competent performance and for Michigan to win this game, like I said, 31-27.
Steve.
Well, I kind of mentioned most of it before I was about ready to make my pick, realizing we were still 10 minutes left in the program. So refocusing just a little bit, again, I like the way Rutgers is looking in general with Greg Schiano as their head coach. There's a different vibe. There's a different attitude there. And with Michigan, I'm not seeing where they can go to hang their hat on something and build from there. They're desperately looking for answers. And I see a team that when things go wrong, they tend to snowball. Rutgers offense starts out strong in the first quarter. It's their best quarter, outscoring their opponents 34-17. It's not a good recipe because I think Michigan just, I don't want to say fold. They just don't have the kick or the fight in them right now to see them to do anything differently. So in a crazed way, I've enjoyed my life mostly. There's very few things that go wrong. Watching Michigan tries to make up for that recently. And you know, for great as my life is, Michigan is there to keep me grounded lately. And I'm afraid that they may do that again. And Rutgers will win this game 24-20.
Oh, God help.
I know.
God help us, Ira.
Yes.
Thank
Sam, what you just said, I concur what you just said. I want to thank game day producer Matt the Biz Mizler inside the MDen studios. I want to thank Joe Simon, Greg Dooley, and Sam Webb. I'm not so sure I want to thank Steve anymore, but I'll thank him anyway. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening and watching tonight's show. Don't forget to go to WTKA.com/countdown to enter for your chance to win the ultimate Bud Light Victor's Lounge tailgate home package, courtesy of our friends at Bud Light. In about an hour from North Jersey, it's Michigan versus Rutgers. Please beat freaking Rutgers. After the game, join me for the Retirement Income Solutions Locker Room Wrap-Up Show presented by Alta Equipment Company right here on Sports Talk 1050 WTK The Ticket. Now it's time for coverage from the Michigan Sports Network. I always say enjoy the game. I hope you do enjoy the game. And as always, go blue.
See you guys. It was real.
Clear.